with her big dumb face.
The longest opening sequence.
It's Alice midlife crisis.
Oh my god, it's so good, guys.
We're not told that. Yeah, we do. We're not told that. It is written. It is written. We're here, SB. So shut your face.
We're here for you.
Yellow flag, all y'all.
Hello, Kevra. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Cheers to you, sir.
Oh yeah.
Real quick,
I brought 3 beers this time because I always run out when I only bring 2.
Yeah,
well, that used to be the policy. It used to be talking about a new movie or any movie within the time it takes to consume 2 beers.
But we just keep talking for longer
anymore.
And longer.
Yeah. Anyway, so Kevra, why are you here?
Why is
I'm
he
here to talk about The Flash with you guys, and because McCurdy needed a place to shoot because he's in Indiana.
Why is McCurdy with you?
Because
he's
we're
getting divorced.
Wow, not nice. That's not even funny, man. That's not.
That's hilarious.
This movie made him want to leave his wife and children.
No, my wife and children, they're still here. They're just at they're at their in-laws. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds like a divorce situation.
You guys are so mean.
They went to her parents.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
really
you followed them. McCurdy folled them up here.
Wow.
No, really. What are you guys up to? Fill us in.
So we're gonna shoot. We're shooting a movie. We're making a movie. We're making a no-budget indie film. It's gonna be called Pairs. It's about a private investigator. It's like an amateur who doesn't know how to do his job. And Charlie, you and I have talked about this movie multiple times because Charlie's gonna edit the movie. But it's kind of like if Batman went missing and Robin had to go find Batman. So that's a general premise of the plot. But it's like it's a comedy, but it kind of falls into some of those like noir tropes. And Kevra is the star of the movie. He plays Pears Perry Matthews.
He plays a stupid asshole.
He drinks pear cider.
Yeah. So
we don't even have a scene where he drinks pear cider, but now I think we're gonna have to put it in there.
Yeah, might as well. Well,
I don't even know if they make pear cider.
I doubt it.
Is that a thing?
You could probably find that
make everything.
in Indiana. Anyway, Nance, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was just I got halfway through a bit more than halfway through the Transformers review. So I got enough of you berating me to be ready for this episode.
Dude, I mean, there was a lot of that night. That was one of those, like, if the movie's terrible, I tend to drink a lot more, and so
Yeah.
I really drowned my sorrows that night, and like, it was hilarious though that we read your statement, and then McCurdy and we couldn't speak quick enough. We were like, this guy's out of his fucking mind. You're like, I'm thinking
you were
like
just
number
like,
2.
It's like I liked it. Action. It was fun.
The car turned into a robot, punched
Turned
another
into a robot.
robot that was a car. Gnarly.
Yeah.
We're like,
No, it was a bear or something.
yeah.
This is the best damn movie.
So then the next day when I cut the short for that episode, I'm watching the trailer, and the trailer's the typical BS in trailers where it's like the best movie of the summer. And it's like the Transformers movie you've been waiting for. And I was like, this is why I hate
It's
Hollywood.
funny they're doing that exact
hate
thing
that
for the
stuff.
Flash.
Oh, because they have to, it's like
They pop
like-
Rotten Tomato symbol on and like the numbers climbing up. Like
yeah. Like put the fresh thing on there, and then it's just like automatic. It's just, if you can just continue to trick the idiots, just get, it's all short-sighted. It's always short-sighted is the plan. Like if you can just trick enough people to go opening weekend, we don't care if we're lying to them again, it just doesn't matter.
Write that down for him.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
well,
that's the thing.
Down.
It's
Write
like
that down.
if you guys were trained,
Best movie she's seen all year.
Yeah.
you got this. You got to be training your actors where it's like, what's this movie about? And the response has to be, it's the greatest movie ever penned. It's God's gift to mankind. Like blah 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 blah. So
don't say that.
That's what they're trained to do. It's like no matter what, you abide by, because it's a religion. You're making a movie. You're pushing a religion, and it's like you never talk shit about the movie. That's just like everybody understands that, even if
you know
everybody
it's
knows
crap.
it's bullshit. You know.
I
You
want
lie.
yeah, I want SB. SB, that's the review. When our movie comes out, that'll be we'll put that in the trailer. It says Rank Podcast. I liked it.
It was so decent.
It was great. It was okay. This movie.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and do my thing so we can get started. I think, but McCurdy, you don't have any. You didn't bring any McCurdy facts with you, right?
No, I did.
Are you shooting
will-
yet?
Okay.
Oh,
We are
going back.
shooting tomorrow. We start
Start
filming
tomorrow. Oh, you guys need
I'm gonna
to
let Charlie do his thing, and then I'll do my thing.
take some melatonin and pass out.
Yeah.
Yep, that too.
Okay. This is
Let's
where
talk for 5 hours.
Once again, this is another one of those things where I sound like I'm going to go one way and I'm going to zigzag the other way because you'll see.
Oh, this is great.
Well, The Flash is a good movie, but is it also a complete mess? Yes, but that's not really its fault because the entire DCEU is a complete train wreck. And the special effects look like the Flash had to time travel back to 2001 to get them made, probably because Marvel is hogging all of the good visual effects houses. But as I've said before, I don't really care about that stuff if the story is on point. So I got to admit, I'm kind of shocked, no pun intended. Remember when I said I was annoyed that the Spider-Verse sequel didn't have a good story going on and instead just leaned into the whole multiverse thing? And hey, look how good the animation is with nothing else to say. Yeah, well, I hate that multiverse crap for that exact reason. It makes for a pointlessly confusing and uninteresting story if that is the story. Well, here that's not the case. The multiverse stuff is just the setting, the backdrop, just as it should be, while the real story is about Barry Allen, aka The Flash, repeatedly going back in time to correct certain events in his past to repair his life in the present before finally learning to let go of the past and accept that certain things cannot be changed. And in fact, it is those traumas, tragedies, and mistakes that make us who we are. They even managed to rope in his never-before-seen origin story in a fresh and fun way by reliving it with a younger Barry. Great! I can't believe I'm saying this, but good job, DC. If you keep this up, I might just leave Marvel and get back in bed with you. You and creepy-ass Ezra Miller, I guess. Even though I don't want to. I was pleasantly surprised. I tell you guys all the time because I always sound like the cynical asshole who hates everything. I walk into every one of these movies wanting to like them, and I walked in with expectations of complete dog shit and walked out being like, I kind of like that. It's a mess. It's a complete fucking mess. But I was like, if you can just like parse all that stuff out, I fucking loved a lot of this movie.
I went in fairly optimistic and left not too let down.
I
not let down at all. It was just like,
can you ignore certain
He didn't like
things?
the movie.
I had a hard time ignoring the CGI. The CGI was
The CGI looked like Harry Potter from 2001, like where everybody looks like a rubber doll. It looked like the Matrix sequels or something. It's what Warner. It's all Warner Brothers, right? Everything I just said: Harry Potter, Matrix sequels, and DC.
Spider-Man,
all Warner Brothers.
First Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, and they all look like shit. Like everybody looks like a rubber doll. For some reason, in 2023. They're still using the same. I don't know if they.
It's like TikTok.
I bet you
it's cheap looking garbage. But I can easily ignore that stuff if there's a story. If there's a story with themes looking at me in the face, I'm like, okay, I'm cool with this. And it started out in ways where I was like, oh no. You know, like the fangirls in the beginning who are like, oh my God, the Flash. And he's like, can I have that candy bar? And she throws it. And
I don't know why he didn't eat it.
He does. Yeah. You're like, dude, you're super fast. Just pick it up and eat it. Like, certainly I was like, okay, this is going to be stupid. This whole thing's going to be stupid. But then it started to win me over because there's an actual fucking story. You have to ignore a bunch of sludge, but I can easily ignore the sludge if there's a fucking story. So it's no masterpiece. And I would say it's not great by any means. It's good as in not bad, but it's also a complete fucking mess. But I don't care because.
But if you compare it to other DC stuff,
yeah, that's my point. It's like all DC sucks, DCEU, and then this is like, you managed to tell a movie that had the multiverse stuff because that's what Marvel's doing, but you didn't just rely on the stupid fucking multiverse. You actually had a story going on with the multiverse as just a backdrop. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, let me get into some just. I will be honest. Like again, we're shooting a movie tomorrow, so I've been very out of it, and I'm just like, all right, gotta do the rank stuff.
You should
But I
drink
came
really heavily
through-
tonight. Both of you. You should drink
Damn it, I
so
didn't bring any
heavily.
alcohol.
They're gonna be all.
So I'm
hungover,
gonna give you
though.
guys a look. So instead of like usually we do these franchise movies and I go into like,
Like
oh,
this
this is what
one.
happened to all these movies.
One of the
only
movies
thing
made
you
of all
really need to know about.
Yeah, one
I
of the
just
movies
skipped
made of
over,
all time.
Huevos. One movie made of all time. One of the
Dude,
movies made of.
is K1 a comedian? I swear. Like,
He
K1's
probably
always
is.
got the zingers, man. Like, he only comes in with zingers.
Coming in.
no
Didn't
merch.
we have a clue as to his age last time? Because I was like,
He
he's
is
got
like
the
the
dad jokes.
Unabomber, you know? He's like that. Like, I'm pretty sure he's like, he's probably 67, you know? And
Yeah.
like we're all thinking like, oh, he's got, you know, like when they famously were like, oh, this guy's got to be in his 20s, and like they were way off, and they found out he was like in his 40s and
Is he
living out
is
in the
he in the
woods.
Discord? Because we've been learning a
The
little bit.
Unabomber?
No,
He just
K1.
passed away.
No,
Like apparently we have a lawyer. We have someone from Europe.
yeah, Lemmy is God is a lawyer. Are you talking about Bond?
Yeah,
James Bond
Lemmy
is
and
a drunk Irishman. I want to know though, SB and K1, did you guys see this movie yet? While we're still sitting on this,
Yeah, did anyone here
stupid-ass,
see this? My brother saw it.
Mugs page.
He and my dad might be
I
watching.
mean, let's just get into it, guys. This is The Flash. DC's The Flash, a movie that has been in development hell for I think 14 years. Was it 14?
14.
It was something like that. Like so just so you're aware, Man of Steel came out in 2013, right? Then they were like, okay, the next movie is going to be Batman v Superman. That was 2016. So like 2015, 2016, they're saying, okay, DC, we're going to have all these other movies that are coming out, including Wonder Woman. There was going to be a Green Lantern movie. There was going to be a Cyborg movie. There was Aquaman, of course. And we also got Suicide Squad. They had all these movies lined up. This one was one of the movies, and they had gone through several different directors. I'm not as prepared as I normally am. I didn't write all of them down, but there were like 3 or 4 directors attached to this movie at one point in time. Like they had somebody, he would leave. They had somebody else, they would leave. And this was supposed to be with the Ezra Miller Flash. So it kept cycling through. Essentially, SB is alluding to, there is one story that is kind of the famous Flash story, which I'm going to get to. So just so you guys are aware, there is a story called Flashpoint. And in the DC universe, at one point in time, they decided, hey, because we have accumulated so much canon over the years, and because it's harder for new people to just jump on board whenever, we're gonna like just do a hard reset on our comics. And it was like sort of, and that's when they came out with this thing called the New 52. Jeff Johns, who's one of the major writers at DC at the time, wrote this story called Flashpoint. It's very similar. It's basically the inspiration for this story, where the Flash goes back in time, saves his mom, comes to the future, finds out everything is completely disarrayed, and it's like this butterfly effect that you see in this movie. There's a lot of big differences, though. For instance, when he comes back, there's not 2 different Barry Allens. It's just he came back, woke up in his own consciousness, doesn't have his powers, but remembers everything from the other timeline. Also, another big difference is that instead of there being a different version of Batman entirely, which they kind of play with this movie because they're like, well, it's the movie universe. We can be a little more meta. We can play with that. This version, instead, he comes back to the past, or he comes back to the future, and Bruce Wayne's dead, and it's actually Thomas Wayne becomes Batman, but becomes like this gun-wielding, more vengeance-style Batman.
Low tech.
Yeah, very low tech. Superman, on the other hand,
Thomas Wayne his dad?
His father.
Okay.
So in that continuity, because Barry, and again, you got to remember in the comics, all these characters kind of grew up at the same time. It's not like in this movie where it's like Barry's obviously much younger than Bruce, so like those things don't add up. But in the comics universe, all those characters are roughly around the same age. So because he went back and changed things. Bruce Wayne dies and Thomas lives. and his wife still dies. So then he becomes this Vengeance of Night. He becomes his version of Batman. Superman, on the other hand, it's very similar in the comics that happens here. The only big difference is obviously we get Supergirl in this movie, but in that version, it was like Superman had gotten captured and they put him in some cryostasis, and he comes out and he's really like thin and lanky. Also, Cyborg is in that version of the in the comic book as well. There's also, instead of the Zod stuff, Aquaman and Wonder Woman like fight each other, like they're actually going at war with each other, and it's this big colossal war. And that's also all happening in the
they're
background.
people, not them, but they're people, right?
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, it's them. Like, but all these characters from the DC universe are fighting that normally don't. So,
Yeah.
like, the world is basically turned upside down. I would just easily, like, to the quickest summation of it is basically take the story from Back to the Future 2, right? Marty is like, I'm gonna steal the sports almanac and then go back in time, make a couple bets, make some more money, and then come to the future, and I'll be super rich. Problem is, his nemesis Biff does the same thing, but he turns the world upside down. He doesn't realize it, and when he comes to the future, he comes back to his timeline, or present, he finds everything is completely messed up. So that's basically what Flashpoint was. But and I also want to point out, like, and I was kind of more prepared for you to be like, oh, I hate this because of the multiverse stuff. But I think DC,
it's always fun to subvert your expectations. Because McCurdy messaged me and was like, "You're gonna hate this movie," and I was like,
actually, no. You and I talked about something. And we were like, huh. Like, we'll get into it. But there's something that you and I talked about that we're like, huh. I was like, maybe Charlie's gonna like this movie because of this one thing. And I was like, you might actually like this movie. Well, it wasn't that it didn't. Again, I will stand by Spider-Man and say it has a story. It's just, it sounds more like you just don't like the story it was telling, or it wasn't as concrete or whatever.
There was no story to Spider-Man. There was no story to Spider-Man.
Sure. You can say
there was no fucking. It was just like, we're in the multiverse, and it should have been just that, but it was like the Spider-Man 2 stuff. We've been down this road. But this had a story. The multiverse stuff was just there. It was like the setting. It was the backdrop. It wasn't the focus.
One of my favorite scenes. Well, we'll get into it, but I'll just keep going. But one of the things I should say is, like, because of the way that DC was set up back in the 40s going into the 50s, is that they had an older Flash named Jay Garrick, and he's the guy with like the metal rim hat. You see him in the movie very briefly, and it's another version of the Flash. Well, what happened was that was the version that was written in the 40s. When they got to the 50s, they created Barry Allen, a new version of the Flash. And then eventually those two versions met up, and that's what kind of kicked off the idea of the multiverse in comic books all across, like whether it's Marvel or DC. That was kind of the first time someone wrote to page and be like, oh yeah, there's different versions of these characters and different dimensions, essentially.
Okay.
So I'm going to just go ahead and move on. But I will say it's ironic because the writer Jeff Johns, who I met because I did work on Stargirl, and I was going to put a picture with me and him in here, but I wasn't able to get it on here. It's not a big deal. But he was originally head of DC for a lot of the previous movies. So you go back to watch Justice League, and some people point to him as part of the reasons why the theatrical version wasn't good. I don't necessarily believe that's necessarily true, but it could be. Who knows? But yeah, anyway, it's just ironic that the story that he did write ends up in this movie, but a lot of his takes on these characters have ended up on screen more recently than not. Of course, we got Andy Muschietti, who's the director of this movie. Most people best know him for both the It movies. He did It 1, It 2, and then his first movie was called Mama. I believe he's Argentinian. So his name is not Andy. I think it's like
Argentinian.
He's Argentine.
You sure he's not Haitian? Oh no, nobody knows the Haitian joke yet because Quantum hasn't come out. Never mind.
Quantum coming
and then
soon.
Of course we've got Ezra Miller, and there's a lot that's like a lot to unpack. Of course, they're in a lot of trouble right now because they've done all this stupid stuff over like the course of a very small amount of time, and Warner Brothers
wasn't flashing people, was he? Because
no,
that would be kind of funny.
He apparently choked a woman. There was another incident where he was like stealing stuff from people. Like I couldn't tell you the specifics on each individual case, but there was just a huge amount of bad stuff that he was doing, and people are like, "Yo, you're a trash human." Apparently, he's getting help. I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
there's a
Let's
whole
let's
other
make
like
sure
that's a
we
whole
get
bag.
the weirdo's pronouns right. Okay.
Right.
But yeah, no, he's always been a weirdo, so it's no surprise. Like nobody is
Right.
surprised that he's
They
like
have always been
he's such a
weirdos.
there's a
They
reason why
have.
his first movie was We Need to Talk About Kevin, because he's a fucking weirdo and
I have
he's
not
really
is that
good
good?
playing a
I have not
fucking
seen that
weirdo.
movie, and I kind of do want to see that.
I've seen it, and he's just
Which one? Perks of
I-
Wallflower?
we need to talk
No,
about Kevin,
we need
where
to
he
talk about Kevin.
plays
Kevin.
like I think he ends up basically being a school shooter or something, and it's like him and
There's
his
something
mom.
very off about him, and it's Tilda Swinton or something, and she's like, that's and it's the mom.
Yeah.
And
We need to
this
talk
is
about
good.
Kevin. Like we need to talk about our son. He's
talking
kind
about
of
his son.
he's like Dylan fucking Klebold or whatever. But
Like there's something wrong with
he is a weirdo, and then you find out he's actually a weirdo, and you're like, okay, I'm not surprised. I don't think he's a very good Flash. I don't think he ever should have been cast.
I like him.
I think
liked him in
he's-
this movie.
I
Well, you're wrong, Nance. He's fucking terrible. Like one of
yes,
the worst
I
things.
agree. I agree.
I don't
I
know.
agree that he should never have been Flash in the first place. And the whole thing was this. It was like, let's make the Flash the comedian of the group, and he's never been good at that. He's never been
just
funny.
very
Even in the
awkward and
Justice
weird,
League
and I
movies,
just-
he wasn't. It
Yeah.
was like all this forced humor, and it's really no good. Because I think
Hmm.
in the cartoons or whatever, the Flash is a jokester.
in the Justice
but Ezra
League
Miller's
cartoon,
not
Flash
funny.
Was the
Like-
funny one.
Ezra Miller should always be playing a sociopathic fucking weirdo rapist psycho. He shouldn't be a comedian, and he is in this. But I
felt
again,
like
I
there
can look
were-
at what I liked about it specifically in this. I hated him in everything DC before this, everything Flash
right,
before
right.
this. But what I liked in this specifically was when the moment you had two Flashes. Backtracking real quick. So as the story goes, he goes back in time to save his mom, therefore changing the future. And then as he's heading back to the future, some weird monster thing kicks him out of his time travel running thing. So he lands back in the time, whatever year it was, where he would have been 18. So you have like
2013. It's
Yes,
2013 is the same year that
2013.
Man of Steel came out.
yeah. So you have 18-year-old Barry
Hmm.
Allen alongside like 30-year-old Barry Allen. And so
Yeah.
we've always been used to an obnoxiously not very funny, really annoying Flash. But then suddenly he had to mature to kind of like school to suddenly make a pupil of his younger self. So suddenly
Yeah.
he had to be mature.
That dynamic was
And
awesome.
I really appreciated that, because suddenly it was like you still had the obnoxious Flash, but then you
Yeah.
had this Flash that was like, we need to be serious about
And
things.
you don't think that was acted
That
well?
was one of the moments I liked.
I'm saying, Nance, I'm saying that's what I'm saying. In the past, it was just the stupid,
The obnoxious
trying to
one.
be funny guy. Now we had that, but almost hyper energized, coupled with the older one being mature. I'm saying that
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
one of my
I
more favorite
thought
parts
that-
of the movie was that he
I thought when
suddenly
they
had to
broke
be the
those two
adult in the room.
characters up, when they basically were like,
And we
yeah,
get
we're
a
gonna
lot of it,
create
which is
another
great.
version. I was like, I was more on board with Ezra.
It was
as
more
those
about
moments
that
when he
than
has some more like
fighting
earnest seriousness to him.
guy.
I was like, he's not that bad. He's not like, he doesn't drive me nuts like he does. But then there's so many scenes when he's just like doing goofy laughs and
It was
weird
very like
stuff
Bill and
and-
Ted.
Yeah, it's just like,
Yeah.
but it's like not good, and I'm just like, oh, this is cringy and hard to watch.
But he had to grow up. Like
I liked it.
over
Yeah.
the course of this movie, he had to grow up to where I was again.
I think they really had to
my
ham
least
it up
favorite
to
character-
show the difference.
Yes,
like,
exactly,
obvious.
Right,
exactly.
right.
My least
It
favorite
just doesn't
character
help
of
when
all
you're already
has
starting
always
up
been the
here.
Flash. And suddenly it's a whole movie about my least favorite character, and so I'm just like, this is going to be terrible. But the movie it defeated me. Like I said, I walk into being the cynical asshole, I guess, in the room. I walk into all these movies hoping to like them, and I usually come out disappointed. But I went into this, and the character that I always hated had to grow and mature, and he did that because he was looking at himself in not a mirror, but he was literally looking at himself. He has that moment in the movie where he's like, wow, you're really annoying and you talk too much. Oh, I get it. Like, I get why nobody likes me. And so that's like he had that was a terrific moment. And then from that moment on, he had to mature to And like and also like get over the whole thing with his mom and all that. Like he had to go on that journey once he faced his 18-year-old self and realized he's kind of a piece of shit. Like it's it's taken the Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror and like going multiverse with it, which I really enjoyed. That all worked.
Man in the mirror.
It flipped me from
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
hating Flash to being like, I'm on board with this now.
Of
I
course,
forgot we were still doing McCurdy's bit.
we still are. We're
Yeah.
just are. Michael Keaton's in this movie, by the way. He plays Batman. This is the first time he's played Batman since 1992. But I do think it's ironic that leading up to this movie, right? He didn't do anything for a while. Then he does this movie called Birdman, where he plays a version. Basically, he's playing a version of himself, like almost verbatim, like Batman.
Which
right?
he should have won the fucking Oscar for, but they
I
gave
That
it-
was a
never
good
saw that
gave it
movie.
some
movie.
bullshit.
It was a
that
great
year.
movie.
Yeah.
It was a great movie.
Last
So he
movie I saw
plays-
him in was The Founder, which I
But he was
Which-
also in
which
the
is
Founder.
awesome.
And then he does Birdman, and then he goes to play the Vulture in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and he's great in that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's like he comes full circle back to the character that probably, not that it started his career, but it definitely like made him
It
a
didn't hurt.
household name, I would say. Because I mean, he was doing Mr. Mom, and he had done Beetlejuice prior to Batman, but like Batman was the movie that he always to this day will say, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
And he probably made he made a pretty big impression with his version of Batman. And I do feel like it's like watching it in the movie, and maybe it's just because I'm like wearing nostalgic glasses while I'm seeing this movie, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. He's Batman again. I do feel like he plays this version of Batman a little bit more on the lighter side. Like he's not as grim and serious as he was in the movies that he was in. But I don't know if that was like an Andy Muschietti choice, if that was his choice. So I was just kind of like,
can you tell me
not
though,
bad.
McCurdy, because I haven't watched his 2 Batman movies in a while.
Right.
Did anything ever happen to Alfred in those?
no. So like we'll talk about this more, but basically the story goes that they made the first Batman. It was a huge success. Of course, they followed up. Tim Burton does the second one, which was a lot more of a Tim Burton movie. And it's still the same actor who played Alfred. It was Michael Gow, I believe is the name of the actor. Well, they went to go do a third one, but because of a whole debacle of how dark Batman Returns was, they decided to go with a different director. They went with Joel Schumacher. There's other issues with Happy Meal toys. There's a whole thing. They ended up Joel Schumacher made Batman Forever, a much more lighter tone movie. Some people think it's not a great movie. I think it's like okay, but it goes more into like the campy 1966 Batman. Michael Gough's still in that movie. When they did Batman and Robin, which tanked the franchise, they did this plot line where Michael Gough was getting sick, and so Batman had to get some kind of medicine for Mr. Freeze and stuff like that. But like they never really ended that storyline.
Like he never
And this
died or
movie is-
anything.
No, but this movie is kind of like saying like these two, like the Batman 89 and the Batman Returns Batman, the Michael Keaton versions are like they were separate from the Joel Schumacher movies that took place after, even though they continue a lot of the same actors, and it feels like it is a continuation, but it's one of those wishy-washy things, kind of like when we talk about our Bond movies where we went to a Sean Connery, then a Lisenby, then back to a Sean Connery, and then it's like it's kind of wishy-washy in that regards, where it's like it's supposed to be the same continuity.
Oh
but
my god! If the
this
Bond
movie's supposed to be
franchise
the-
goes into the fucking multiverse and like they bring
will.
back Lazenby, and
No,
'cause
I
they
want
gotta
them to
follow
bring back Brosnan.
goddamn trends.
I want
you
to
know?
team up. I want to team up with Brosnan and Daniel Craig, and then it'd be like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to bring that ASMR sexiness back. Nance, you've been muted for 2 minutes and you keep talking.
I will keep.
Been
I will
talking.
keep.
I don't
rushing
think
through
I've been
these.
talking.
We got Sasha Cali. She's Supergirl. This is the only thing she's been in. I was like, oh, she's not
Really?
in any other
I was
TV.
wondering if she had been.
She was
anything
in
else.
The Young
The
and the
Young and the
Restless, which is,
Restless.
that was it. Which is like I believe it's a novella in it's a Spanish novella, I believe. But yeah, that's the only thing that I saw her. And I'm
that's
like,
that's
she's
an
not-
American one. There might be a Spanish version, but
Yeah,
The
there's a
Young and the
Spanish
Restless
version. I
is
guess
like
that
a
was-
classic.
I thought she was good. She doesn't have a lot
She
to.
doesn't
I mean,
do much.
she
I
doesn't-
prefer the Flash and
doesn't have a
Batman thing,
lot
and they
to
add
give.
her in, and it's like, eh.
Well,
Yeah,
I think it's like she's like a MacGuffin in the story. It's almost like,
Yeah.
well, we got to get Superman back, and then like, oh wait, you're
Well,
not.
we don't have
Superman.
Henry Cavill, so what do we do?
Right.
Just
You're like
gender flip it. You know.
But I thought it worked. I thought it worked the way that they had already set this story up. But there's one aspect in the story that I actually like really, really like. There was 2 scenes I really, really liked in this movie. One of them was a little more annoying than the other, but we'll talk about it when we get through this. Of course, Ben Affleck comes back. This is probably his last time, and we of course talked about Ben Affleck earlier this year with Air, which he's great in. Kevin finally saw Air. What did you think of Air? You liked it?
Best movie I've seen this year.
Best movie.
Have you seen Beau Is Afraid and Infinity Pool?
I have not.
No,
I have not
okay.
seen either of those movies.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't watch a movie every single week like you guys.
Yeah.
Get on our level,
yeah.
bro.
I know.
Get on our level.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ben Affleck's in this movie. It's a little weird. I don't know. I wasn't like. I was like, his performance in this. I'm just like, part of me is like, yeah, this is fine. And then Wonder Woman showed up, and I was like, this is silly again. But whatever.
I remember RLM pointing out how it's so weird when you take these super suits that are kind of designed to be in dark environments, and you put them out in the daylight, and everybody just looks goofy. You know.
Well, they
yeah.
made the one for this movie. Like if you look carefully, the ones that they made for this movie are a little bit different from the previous ones, but the cowl is actually, the cowl in this one's blue. And they also did something like it's a different armor that he's wearing. So it's a slightly different suit, but I do agree with you that like there's a moment where I was like, yeah, this is jarring. Like I'm not against all this, but it's jarring to see Batman fighting in daylight.
It's a goddamn mess.
CGI,
the whole movie is a goddamn mess, but I'm like I expected that. I didn't expect to enjoy this at all.
And then
you know,
Michael Shannon returns as General Zod. I think he was in BVS, I believe. Like they did have him. His corpse is in BVS.
Corpse. Yeah,
they brought him, and wasn't he in Justice League?
No.
But they brought him back. Of course, I've always liked Michael Shannon. I feel like it just sucks that like he did the one movie and like kind of just hasn't really done anything big ever since. At least that's what I feel.
He's
in a lot of stuff.
Exactly.
He's in a lot of stuff.
He's a steadily working actor. He's never been.
He's in like an HBO show too or something?
Yeah, he's one of those actors you appreciate because he seems to be a craftsman rather than like a fame seeker or whatever.
Right.
You know,
he's
like an actor's actor type of guy.
One of my favorite things he's ever done was there was like some sorority letter that famously went out through an email, and he reads it verbatim, but like he's just sitting in like it was for College Humor or something, and he's just reading this letter off but giving a performance behind it, and it's just the funniest thing in the world because he takes it so damn seriously. Love Michael Shannon, he's great. And then of course we got tons of Easter eggs in this movie. Real quick, I'll point out, of course, we got Wonder Woman shows up. Jason Momoa was straight off the set of Fast X. Got really hammered. They brought him onto set. They were like, "What do you want to like?" Hey, he's like, "I can't memorize lines. I'm too drunk. Give me more beer." He's like, "All right, okay, here." And then they ad-libbed. Like it felt like they ad-libbed. You do see.
Wait, he was in the Flash. This movie.
He was in the post-credit scene.
Post-credits.
Oh, I don't stay for that crap.
Yeah, I always stay for it, even if it's in another movie.
What real quick pet peeve when a post-credit scene has nothing to say. Why have it at all? This one was like, hey,
remember earlier this year I did say,
bar.
I told you that this year we're going to get 4 DC movies because it's basically like these were the DC movies in production before DC or Warner Brothers got rebought again. And so they were just like, all right, everything that we have on the line, like this is it. We're getting rid of these movies, and now we're going to start fresh with what James Gunn's basically creating after this. And it's some of it might still involve some of that stuff, but it sounds like it's basically like, okay, this is the end of the line. This is the second movie this year. The next one's going to be Blue Beetle, and then the end of the year we'll get the sequel to Aquaman. So I think they probably put it in there because they're like, we got to do something to kind of say, oh yeah, we're doing Aquaman is the next movie. There's some videos online that are saying like, oh, it basically says, oh, Arthur Curry's still around in this universe. Who knows? It was just kind of a weird thing.
The fact that like Batman was different in like every universe, but Jason Momoa is sticking around to play Aquaman.
Right, it could be. I don't know.
That's what it very much like. It's like so there's a different Batman and all these different like timelines and all this stuff. Yeah, but you are always the same, so you're sticking around. Buddy.
Right. So I
Yeah.
have no idea. Of course, we've got I said Wonder Woman. Adam West Batman shows up, and then we got Christopher Reeves, and I do not remember the actress name who played Supergirl in the 80s, but there was a Supergirl movie that was semi-tied to the Christopher Reeves movies. She makes an appearance. At the very end of the movie, of course, we get George Clooney as a really fun gag where, they're like, wait, Bruce, you're not Bruce Wayne, and it's George Clooney, and of course he was the last actor to play Batman in that Joel Schumacher, Tim Burton era. And then the big one that people were like, whoa, they actually did this was Nick Cage. Now, Nick Cage, I had to go back and rewatch a really funny Kevin Smith sketch. I sent it to you, Charlie. I don't know if I sent it to you, Nance, but I sent it to Charlie, but it wasn't a sketch. Basically, Kevin Smith famously back in the 90s, like he went to Warner Brothers and they pitched him some ideas. One of those ideas, they were like, oh, we're doing a Superman movie. And he got roped into doing it. Well, years later, he did one of these stand-ups, more of like a Q&A type thing. And he kind of recounts what happened with that.
They're amazing. I mean, you should go YouTube.
It's a really funny YouTube video.
Kevin Smith on YouTube just doing these. He would just do these talks. I don't know, and like in different cities,
college campuses,
and people would just ask him questions, and he'd go on for 30 minutes telling different stories that are incredibly entertaining and fucking hilarious.
So in the 90s, after they had done Batman, they were planning to do a Superman movie, and Kevin Smith had written one of the drafts for this. Eventually, they got Tim Burton was going to direct this movie. They had cast Nicolas Cage as Superman, and people were like, "This sounds ridiculous," because of course it's Nick Cage. Like, what are you gonna? It's Nick Cage. So they did this in that Kevin Smith video. There's a whole talk about the producer John Peters, who's actually he's the guy who owns the rights to Superman. Wanted to put a giant spider fighting Superman. Like that was one of the things. He's like, you got to put a giant spider in it. So they're like, yeah, you got to put a giant spider in it. And like Kevin Smith, if you watch the video, Kevin Smith makes the whole thing about how like the studio's like, well, don't call it a giant spider, call it something else. It's like, yeah, call it a Thingarian snare beast. He's like, go. So they did all of this. They were like 3 weeks out from actually like getting into production, actually begin shooting. They had all these images. They had done all these screen tests with the suits. They had different versions of the suit. I just ended up watching a whole documentary that somebody did a couple years ago about the making of this movie that never happened, called Superman Lives. But it has a bunch of interviews. So anyway, all of that being said, that's the reason Nick Cage is in this movie as Superman. That was a thing that was going to happen. And if you're in on the joke, you're like, oh my God, they finally did it. They made Nick Cage Superman in a movie and just like did it as a fun little Easter egg. Kind of like what Marvel did.
There's no way they actually shot Nick Cage though, right?
No, that's Nick Cage.
I doubt
Did they get him in there and then de-age him? Or did they just CG the whole thing?
I'm pretty sure that's
confirmed.
You think he would have insisted on having a line or something?
Yeah.
No, I think they might have been able to. But again, Nick Cage is a huge comic book nerd, so I wonder if he was just like, oh yeah, I'm totally game, I'll do it.
Yeah, but like, I mean, they have Christopher fucking Reeves in there, and he's dead. Right. So like, the question is, did they do the whole Bruce Willis thing where he's not actually there, or was he there? Which isn't a big difference.
For sure. I will be honest. I don't know for sure, but I am leaning more towards they probably got him, scanned him, and did something. Either they scanned him, which means like they went into a special room with all like 200 cameras around him and took a photo of him, and then they put that in the computer, which is
like
probably
what they did. Like they did. No, that's what they did to Harry Potter and Neo back in 2001.
They still do that today. We still do that. Like they still do that today on set. But
but the special effects in this movie are 20 years old.
I know.
It's hilarious.
They look terrible.
Very, very bad.
It's amazing.
I'm not going to defend the special effects.
But I thought Nicolas Cage was better than like all those other people. That's why I feel like it might have actually.
They might have actually used him in this movie,
and then
I don't know
de-aged the shit, like just blurred everything. Yeah.
But really, guys, that's all I have. Nans, wait, there are more than one Batman. What did you think of this movie?
I mean, I think we mostly covered it. I'm kind of in line with Charlie on this one. I enjoyed it. I went in relatively optimistic because I watched trailers like a normal person. Charlie went in optimistic for different reasons, I suppose. I'll say I haven't seen all the DC movies. I I guess I wrote them off and just like didn't even bother with a lot of them. So I'm not super familiar with Flash or Ezra, or if anyone else played Flash or like comic books or all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess if I had to start talking about the list, it's almost like this is a exact opposite of Transformers in the way you guys were talking about it, where this one has story and everything surrounding it is just crap or a mess, kind of, not crap, but it is
A
quite
mess.
messy. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
Transformers, it has no story, but everything around it is like beautiful robots fighting robots. So
Beautiful
Yeah.
robots fighting robots.
Beautiful robots fighting robots.
Yeah.
So,
Devin
yeah.
didn't like the movie.
Yeah,
Me, I'm gonna compare it directly to the Spider-Verse though, because that's for me that's
And
the
I was
more
just
direct
like,
comparison.
surely we've had this story many times, right? Not necessarily like
Well, like I was
how we
thinking,
get it
I
in
was
this
thinking
movie, but
about this.
certainly going back in time, trying to fix something, you can't
This
do that.
okay. So this
Yeah.
story,
Learn your
so
lessons.
Temporal
this story is
paradoxes and all
basic.
that.
If you go back to like the simplest version of what this story is simply be careful what you wish for. Like that's
Yeah.
the story. That's what the story is, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, like watching this movie, there are a lot of tropes that I was like, I've seen this. There's one trope in this movie where I'm like, I saw this in 2 other movies not that long ago. I feel like I'm seeing a cliche or a pattern. Kind of like how a couple years ago, like we'll talk about it when we get into Skyfall, where like the villain halfway through the movie gets captured, but he wants to get captured. Like that was starting to become like a movie trope, or like how there's a blue thing in the sky. This movie, for spoilers purposes, has this trope of the hero, the villain of the movie is actually the hero, but in the future. And
Yeah.
that has happened now. This is the 3rd movie I've seen that happen. The other 2 movies was Buzz Lightyear, which a lot of people never saw, but in that movie, Zurg turns out to be a version of Buzz Lightyear where he went far into the future, because very much like this movie, he is trying to fix the past and he can't quite do it. So he keeps going farther and farther and farther into the future to try to stop this whole thing. And it becomes more and more of a mess. Another movie that was very similar to this was also Lego Movie 2. In that movie, the Chris Pratt Lego figure ends up becoming like, basically, I can't remember if it's like he goes in the future or what happens, but there's something where he like goes in the future and he becomes kind of this badass version of himself. But like it's sort of hinted at as you're watching the movie. You're like, is that the same guy? So as I'm watching this movie, I was like, this is the same. Like it's kind of the same story.
Yeah.
In that
we talk
regard.
about this in Quantum though. In Quantum,
Right.
I'm like, I don't care, because we should be watching these movies in a vacuum, which is
Right.
regardless of where an idea may have come from, did it work or not? And if any of these elements is like, oh, this came from Buzz Lightyear, this came from
Well,
this.
no, like
If
I mean,
they
to your
crash and don't
point,
fucking
to your-
work, that's
like,
one thing.
right.
If they
To your
work,
point, I'm saying it's like that. It's something to acknowledge. Like the outside of it, it's just like, yeah, I did
it's
see that
interesting to
before.
point out the trends.
But it's also like saying like it's the same as people who say, oh, Avatar is Dances with Wolves. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but so is West Side Story to Romeo or Juliet, or Lion King to Hamlet. It's
Yeah,
like,
who
you're
cares?
retelling a version of a story. Like I don't.
Yeah.
That's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
At least I don't think it is.
Quan Masalis is just trying to be Jason Bourne. It's like, yeah, who cares? Let's just judge
that's
the
not-
movie.
That's not a
Regardless,
story
you know.
element. That's just the way in which the movie's made. It's
Yeah,
like, that's a different thing. It's a different thing. Okay, there are 2 scenes in this movie I do want to talk about, though. 2 scenes that I really liked, and I think you'll jump on and you'll have your own things to talk about. So, Charlie, I think the issue that you seem to have with the Spider-Verse movie, at least, was that the idea of multiverse travel is very easy. It's just more of a like a
No,
or
it
just like it happens really. It happens really quick.
It's like, what's the story?
But
What's the story? Oh, there's a multiverse. There's like all these different universes.
right.
Okay, but what's
There's all
the
these
story?
different versions of
Yeah,
it, but there's no.
The
we
story is
never,
there's a multiverse. Yes, but okay, I get that. There's a multiverse. What's
Yeah.
the story? There's a universe where Spider-Man's Indian. Okay, but what's the fucking story? Well, I don't know. What do you want? I want a story. The story is
Well, I
the
know
multiverse.
Spider-Verse had a story.
Relying on the fucking multiverse to be the story, but you can't
There's a
rely
story in
on
Spider-Verse.
on
I just feel like
setting
you
to be the
never
fucking
accept it.
story.
You never accept it. There's a story in Spider-Verse. It's just,
No,
I
there's
don't think you
not.
accept it.
What is it?
There is.
What
So,
is
like,
it?
Okay, I'm getting there. Calm down. I
What?
wanna talk about
Nobody's
my
been
other
able
two
to
things.
answer that question. What is the story?
This story. I told you this the last time. The story is that this version of Spider. Do you need to cover yours? Do you want to go see this movie? He hasn't seen it yet. So
Muffs, earmuffs.
Earmuffs.
Spoiler muffs.
Okay, so in the Spider-Verse movie, the new one, the idea is that
Go get
he
beer.
finds out that he is already realizing that he's like a mistake. He's not even sure if he should be on this planet or whatever. And then he realizes that like he's like everyone's saying, "Oh, you have
That
to
comes
be
up at the last second.
specific way."
In the last
The
20
story- hold on.
minutes, that's introduced. In the last 20 minutes, it's like you're an anomaly and you should never have existed, which is not a story.
Hey,
That was the first movie. The first movie was you're a fake. You're a fraud. You never should have existed. You're not Spider-Man. You're a fake.
right.
That
Can
was
we-
all
okay, hold on.
settled in the first
Can we back
fucking
up?
movie.
Can we
The
back up, Chucky
sequel
Rant?
wasn't about
Hey,
that.
Chucky, I
Okay?
need you to back up because I do want to talk about this movie that we were supposed to talk about this week. Kevin, you
We're
want
going
to
to talk about Spider-Man for
I
the
wanna
rest of
talk-
the year because it's
I'm-
the most
I hate you.
overrated movie of the
I
fucking
hate
year
you
is
so much.
fucking across
hate
the
you.
Spider-Verse.
Were
I
there a
hate
lot
you.
of commenters in that video?
The nerds came out of the woodwork to be like, you just don't get it. And I was like, explain it. Explain it.
You don't speak for the
Nobody can explain that movie. Nobody.
Anyway, okay,
But it
so
has
there are two
Spider-Man.
scenes. There are two scenes in this movie that I really appreciated,
Okay.
and one of them, and it was because whereas like the Spider-Verse movies, and even like Marvel, like even like Doctor Strange, into the multiverse of madness.
Multiverse of Madness.
Even in a movie like that, or even like Ant-Man Quantumania is barely a multiverse movie. It kind of just like mentions it, but doesn't really dive into it. Loki dived into the multiverse stuff, but no
Yeah.
weird time travel way. Kind of like this movie. But there was a scene where there were two scenes that I appreciated. One was when it was a setup to, it was basically the scene that sets up the idea of how are we going to be able to put this picture. It was kind of like the setup as how do we get Michael Keaton in this movie and it make logical sense. And I love that scene because it really kind of grasps you into the idea of like, what does it mean to be in a multiverse when
his
Barry's sitting
description?
around, when Barry's sitting around and they're talking about just
I thought that
any
was
movie.
cool.
And they're saying, "Oh yeah, that Back to the Future movie, the one with Eric Stoltz." I'm like, Eric Stoltz never played.
Yeah.
He didn't play Marty McFly, which famously, by the way, he
Marty
played.
McFly.
He was going to Marty McFly.
They made the joke of, then how do you explain Marty McFly
Marty
here?
McFly.
yeah.
Like, that's not even on the right body
The
part.
flexible roommate.
but he yeah. So Marty McFly famously was going to be played by Eric Stoltz, but like they were 6 weeks into production, he wasn't really getting the character. They famously fired him. They originally wanted Michael J. Fox. They ended up getting Michael J. Fox eventually. So it's like it's one of those weird choice things where it's like, yeah, we could have lived in a universe where Eric Stoltz became Marty McFly in this famous movie.
A lot of
so-
this multiverse stuff is Hollywood
But-
jerking itself off.
But
A lot of it.
but-
Like
hold
bringing
on, hold
George
on, hold on, hold
Clooney-
on.
Bringing George
Hold on.
Clooney in at the end of this movie is Hollywood jerking itself off.
When was
It's
the last
funny,
time he was in
fun.
anything?
but
It
but
was
it's
fun.
it-
I liked
that's
it.
I
It's
just
cynical.
said
I mean,
it's
I hate you.
funny. It's funny and it's fun, but a lot of it is Hollywood jerking
wasn't
itself
finished.
off.
I wasn't finished. I was talking about that scene, but I did appreciate that they were like using that
Speaking of
moment as like
jerking
a more
McCurdy's not
micro
finished.
version of being like a micro version of like if you're sitting around with friends and then you realize like, oh wait, this is not my universe. Like, how do you guys all think this one thing that to be true? But I'm the only one in the room saying,
Yeah.
no, you're wrong. But
Yeah.
then you're like, no, it's totally true. And like you looking up, you're like, wait, am I in my like?
And
I
I
love
like
that they
that
set that up.
stuff. I like
then I
that
also
stuff
liked-
because it's not the focus
Yeah.
of the fucking movie. Those are just
Right.
funny
And then I
little
liked,
moments
but
in the movie.
it's a funny moment, but they use that moment to set up when they finally meet Bruce Wayne. They
Yeah.
realize, wait, you're not Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne, because he thinks he is. You're like, who are you? You're Bruce Wayne. He's like, yeah, I'm Bruce Wayne. And
Yeah.
he knows he's Batman. But I like that scene where they're like using the spaghetti to explain, like, yeah, when you see in most movies, they talk about time travel and it's a splinter off moment. But he's like, that's not what happens. You're just jumping points to another another universe. And if you're in another universe, that past could be completely different from the past that you're used to.
Yep.
And I liked that like
Mm-hmm.
little bit to explain to me. I'm like, oh, okay, so I understand how they're going to use multiverse in this movie. And
Yep.
it made sense to me enough where I'm like, okay, I'm glad they set that up in a way that
The
was
reason I like it is
it's smart enough
because
to set up.
it's reminiscent of that moment in Austin Powers that I love, which is he's like, well, wait a second, Basil. If I went back in time and I did this, then I did. Oh no,
Right.
I've gone cross-eyed. And he's like, I suggest you just don't give a fuck and just enjoy yourself. And that's the way it should be. Whereas Marvel is really taking the multiverse seriously. Whereas with this movie, DC's like, just go with it, dude. Just go with it.
I think
even
it's
like
more than that, though. I think I really liked Keaton's whole scene explaining
his
how it
explanation.
worked. He's
Yeah.
like, instead of two parallel lines of spaghetti where one bends away from it, it's a fulcrum. It stays stiff, and it gets like,
when you
even
fuck
though
with
you
the
traveled
past,
here,
you're changing not just the future, but you're changing everything that came before it. And I was like, that doesn't make sense, but I'm for it. I can accept that rule.
okay, yeah.
I'm cool with it. You know,
I just like that he
it
looked
makes,
like James May.
like
so.
recently I was watching an episode of Star Trek Voyager where it was like something
Wait, you
where
watch Star Trek?
what oh hell yeah one one of the characters like something happens and then a couple characters in the future travel to a point where something horrible happened in the past and they kind of rewrite it so that Voyager can continue on its way home without tragedy. And that guy who did it was like, well, wait a second. If I was in the future and I did it while I was in the past, then like blah, blah, blah. And the captain just straight up says, when it comes to temporal paradoxes, I recommend just don't even think about it. You know, and I was like, exactly. Just enjoy the story because, and that's my ultimate point. When the story is temporal paradox or multiverse paradox, that's a really confusing and bad story. If that's all you have. But if there's a story going on in the foreground while the background is the temporal paradox, I'm okay with it because the background is confusing and a vague blur of bullshit. But the foreground is humanity, and
If
we
the
had that. This
foreground
movie,
Flash is in focus, and this crap CGI Flash is in the background.
yeah, which this whole movie. Speaking of this movie being a mess, the whole time they clearly they had some actor play a body double. So because the whole movie is that you have two Barry Allens, and in every single scene, one of them is the real Ezra Miller, and the other one is somebody who had their face replaced, and it looks awful in every single scene. It was so fun to be like, oh, there's a fake one. Oh, there's a real one. There's a fake one. Like that, and that's what I mean. I didn't even care that everything sucked special effects wise because at least I had a story going on that I could be like, whatever. I can enjoy the story, but if you don't give me a story to follow and everything sucks, then that's when I walk out wanting to kill myself and everybody around me. So
Yeah.
I left happy. So what I want to know more than anything is, Kevra, what did you hate about this movie?
I mean, the absolute worst thing that ever happened to DC was Zack Snyder, but the second worst thing was some of his casting choices, mainly Ezra Miller.
Yes,
Ezra
I
Miller,
agree.
he's
I
a fantastic
fucking
actor.
agree.
Just like Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse Eisenberg.
Ooh, I hate Jesse Eisenberg.
I like him
I
as
don't
an
know
actor,
why,
but terrible.
but every time he talks, I want to punch him in the face.
But when cast correctly,
Right,
to
Jason
Kever's
Eisenberg.
point, when cast
like him in
correctly, they're
Social
good
Network.
Him in
actors.
Social
It's
Network,
like,
he's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
In Social Network, Jesse Iceberg. Jesse Iceberg. His name is multiverse name, Jesse Iceberg.
Yeah.
Playing,
he's great in
Zuckerberg.
Social Network.
Yes.
But he's great in Social Network, and I think a lot of people expected him to play that. But he didn't. He plays some weird
I'm
lost
trying to be
out
the
of his mind.
Joker. Oh, yeah.
Ezra Miller also would have been a good Joker or Riddler. Like, he's just so amped up and crazy and all that. Like, it would have been. But as Barry Allen, even as the older, more mature one, he's fucking annoying as shit, dude.
Yes.
Like, he's a whiny little bitch. He's like, he was graining. Like, I know everybody else is like, oh, well, the younger one, the actual bad version. I think they're both fucking terrible. I could not stand either one. I could not get on board. I was I just kept watching it and being like, why couldn't it have been anyone else? And I will
Until
say
his mom. The scenes with his mom were great. Like
the one
Like, the
scene that I liked
scenes
with his mom was the
were
grocery one.
good, and that's where I was like,
Like,
okay, you got
genuinely
me.
emotional at the end.
Yeah, like where
Charlie, did
he's
you cry?
he was wearing sunglasses, and like he has tears coming out of the sunglasses. Like it was genuinely touching. Fuck you, Nans. I did cry in public, but only because I'm the only person in the Regal Cinemas. I'm the only person there at 11
He's
a.m.
not allowed to cry.
If there
It's in
was
his contract.
anybody sitting around or in
Did
front
you
of me, I
loud
would
cry?
not fucking cry. But god damn it, like it was genuinely touching, and that's what I'm saying.
I think we all
Spider-Man
agree.
didn't
No,
have that shit. Like Spider-Man was just like multiverse. This had that human story that I could actually attach myself to, right? Because Kevra, I agree with you. Ezra Miller should never have been in any of these movies. But when it came to those scenes, I was like that human story that anchored this whole thing, where even down to when Michael Keaton's like, why are you so attached to saving this particular, neighborhood of the multiverse? He's like, well, this is where my mom is. All the mom stuff was very sweet, very
I only
touching.
like that last scene, honestly, with the mom stuff. Like I thought everything else, like, God didn't give a shit. And I thought she's the one who really sold it, honestly. Like she's like,
Sure.
I know I'm just a stranger in the grocery store, but can I give you a hug?
The
And
fact
I was
that
just
like again, he had the sunglasses on and he had tears coming out of the
I think
sunglasses,
she
and she's
kinda
like,
knew.
wait, who are you? Like that was all. So like, cause like he's saying goodbye. Here's what worked. What worked was that it was such a mundane location. It's just like a random grocery store, but he's saying goodbye to his mother. It was so fucking touching. It was like, and it plugged into the whole story from beginning where him and his dad are talking about how mom died, to the flashbacks about mom, all the way to that end where
I
he's
feel like
saying
we're
goodbye to
approaching a
her.
mega spoiler.
It was so well. We're always in spoilers. Who gives a fuck? It was
just so anyone's.
It was so human to where I'm like, in that moment, I'm not thinking about the multiverse or any of that bullshit. And that's what Spider-Man's missing. That's what fucking Quantumania was missing, was that human touch. And it's like, what's the story? The multiverse. Oh, multiverse. That is not interesting. That is a setting. That is not a story. So this had what I wasn't expecting was this to have that human touch. And as much as Ezra Miller is a creepy fucking weird rapist psycho,
I don't think he raped anybody.
he probably did at some point. Let's be real. I don't care, because that stuff with his mom was so human and touching that I was like, I'm into this. I am
It
so
was barely
into this.
even there though. Like that's the thing, is he goes
Kevra,
back,
is that
saves
what
his
keeps
parents.
you from like at least somewhat enjoying the movie? Is just Ezra Miller? And
I mean, I was
the
talking to
portrayal.
Ryan about this last night, and I was really debating on it because I like.
he left the theater. He calls me. He's like, I wasted $12, and I was like, I didn't feel that bad about the movie.
Dude.
Yeah, no, it's the worst movie I've seen by far this year. But I will say,
I don't
Ezra
think it's
Miller
the worst.
is
It's definitely not.
was
the
it worse
Well,
than
you guys have seen way worse
Mario?
yes, way worse than Mario. I wanted to just like punch the screen. Like Mario didn't make me angry. I just kept being like, oh, I wish they would have done this better. But like Ezra Miller, I just wanted to punch every.
I will say
5 seconds.
I will say to like just the contradicting point, more of like a watered down version of this right here.
Pass McCurdy. Yeah, you've got the punky Pass McCurdy, and then here's the older, middle-aged, mature McCurdy.
Guys, I'm tired. So here's this is my watered down take as to where he's coming from. Charlie, I do agree with you. There's stuff in the story, like we haven't even touched on like the crux, like the villain thing that we were talking about. We haven't really talked about that yet. But there's like the villain stuff and all that. I do think this is one of those cases where like the spectacle does need to support the story enough to like keep you engaged with the story. And there were moments where, because the CGI and because the performances and all these things that tend to, like, even when we talk about Bond, we're like, these things don't matter. And I'm like, they do when the like you have a genuine story, but then when you see the movie, you're like, oh god, this is a half-baked mess. And I was like, I wish the other elements were in line. I wish that I I wish
But-
Marvel had not taken up all of
I
these.
had no
CG
expectations that fucking
And, like,
DC
for me-
would come through on that
For
shit.
me, I had a
Maybe
little bit.
that's
I had a little
why
bit
they were
more,
so
and I also
crap
say
in
I
the
will say I'm a
past.
little biased because there is another thing that I think some people would call it maybe a plot hole, maybe not, depending on your take of it. But because again, I am somebody who read the Flashpoint comic first, which is very, very similar to this story. Like you'd read that book and you're like, oh yeah, this is like the same story. There's some big differences with the two berries, which I think is actually like kind of a good thing. The problem is by doing the two berries thing and having this dark flash, they completely got rid of this other part of that Flashpoint story I did not talk about, was that the person that killed Barry's mom is the Flash's nemesis. He essentially, like, his name is Reverse Flash. They also call him Dr. Zoom. There's different names for him, but he is essentially he is like the Flash's Joker. He's like this obsessive Flash fan from the far future who wanted to kind of make himself look a little bit like the Flash. And he wears a yellow costume and he's like the reverse and he's like even faster than the Flash. And he actually went back in time and killed Barry's mom. And so the Flash doesn't know this. And then when he goes back, he finds out he has to stop Reverse Flash. Well, then he doesn't know. By the end of the story, he finds out that he's like, yeah, Barry, I'm the reason why I caused all your issues. I killed your mom. And you're like, you what? You were the one who killed my mom. So they took that part of the story out,
bro.
Fuck
you.
did
That's
that?
low.
That's
How
low,
dare
bro.
you?
But I will say,
I'm
I just
below
think
that.
that is kind of something where I'm like, I feel like that's slightly a little bit of a plot hole in this movie where they never reveal who killed Barry's parents. And if you know the comics, you're like, oh, it was Reverse Flash, but they never say Reverse Flash.
I
They never
don't know
mention
the
Reverse
comics,
Flash.
and I
So you don't know the comics, but then I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
exactly.
leave the movie and I'm like, so they're never gonna, like, we're never gonna find out, even though when you look back and you watch that scene
Well, that's
where
not a
he's got a
plot
knife.
hole.
And that's
No,
that's
but
why I
when you
feel
watch the
fine with
scene,
Ezra
when you
Miller.
watch the
It's
scene
like
and you see the knife in the mom, you're like, it's not just a knife in her. It's like she's like, there's like a burn or a scar there. It's not just a knife. So it's a very odd thing where I'm like, were they at one point thinking we're gonna do the
Well, isn't
Reverse
there gonna be a
Flash and then
sequel to
change their
this?
minds?
Isn't there a
I don't
sequel
know
to
yet.
this that's gonna happen or something?
I don't
They've
know.
already written a
Going
script, but
to?
it sounds like it's probably not going to go into production because they're probably not going to use Ezra.
well, they're
again
just
because he's,
completely rebooting everything, right?
dead.
But they're rebooting everything, but they could still, like, again, we don't know how much they're rebooting.
That
We don't know if
seems
it's like
silly.
we don't know if it's a straight reset. We know certain actors are not coming back. We don't know
They
exactly
should
who
just
is and
reset
who isn't yet.
everything.
Reset everything.
Don't
But
touch
they're-
anything made thus far.
But this
Just
is,
be
as
done.
again, like I talked about a couple weeks ago, like James Gunn had talked about, basically, because now he's the head of DC Studios, he's talking about, like, yeah, this movie resets the universe. And as you watch with the way that they're like, yeah, there's that whole scene where all the different timelines are converging and hitting each other, and then we get this, he kind
I
of
thought
like
that
a
was a
Planet
cool
of the Apes.
visual and
Planet
made
of the
a lot of
Apes
sense.
moment where, like, he comes to his version and he's like, wait, you're not my version of Batman. I thought I fixed all this. It kind of just says, yeah, the universe is all fucked. Like, it's going to
Yeah.
be different. So
Yeah,
we don't know what
everything's
that's going to be in the
fucked.
future.
Yeah,
We don't know
everything's
what that
fucked.
means in
Just
the
roll with it. I suggest
Right.
you just don't think that hard. They'll bring in Basil
Right.
exposition. Is
Oh
like,
no! I've
I
done
suggest you
contact.
just don't give a
Right.
shit and enjoy yourself. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh no, I've gone
So,
cross-eyed.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where they're going to go with it. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
find out.
But it's also
Okay.
weird because they haven't recast the Flash yet, and he's the guy who reset everything.
I think
Yeah.
think if we're talking movie politics stuff, I think the reason why the studio never said anything is because they need people to go see the movie. And if I, like, this is the problem with, like, the Shazam movie or Black Adam. If I find out that, like, oh, well, what's the point of watching this movie because it's not going to lead to anything else, the assumption is if I'm watching superhero movies, they're going to lead to something else or something
Yeah.
bigger because Marvel's kind of set that standard. Then why should I care if Ezra Miller's not coming back? So instead, the
It's
studios
just like
never said.
Lazenby. It's
But
no
they should
different than
stand alone
Lazenby.
too.
Yeah,
But
but the
it was like,
studios
why
never
should I keep
said
watching
yes or
Bond
nay.
movies if Lazenby
Right,
took
but the
over?
studio's never going to say, like, the studios is never going to say, like, yeah, this is, like, he's coming back. Like, they're not going to say that, but they're also not going to say, oh, he's never, he's going away, because they still want people to see the movie. So they're never going to, like,
But that also
they're
makes
gonna
no
be-
sense because people went and saw the Joker, even though it was not connected to fucking anything, and it was still.
But they came out and said that. They were like, yeah, this is just an artistic
a one-off.
version or different take or one-off. And they said that going into it. And it's still, they were going for like a critical darling versus something like this, where it was more like, this is the fun summer action blockbuster movie. So
Yeah.
I really just think that we won't know we'll wait a couple months. They'll come back and they'll finally say, yeah, we're bringing Ezra back in this. Or they'll say, no, we're not bringing Ezra back. We're actually going to recast, or we're not doing the Flash for a while.
I read
We're
that the
keeping character,
director
but
wants to keep Ezra on, Machietti or whatever. I read that as long as he's gonna do a sequel, he wants to keep
Batman
Ezra.
now.
So is he?
Right.
Yeah,
He's gonna. So the next one of the next DC movies that James Gunn said that in his like the DC universe that he's creating, one of the first ones called Brave and the Bold, and it's going to be a Batman Robin story. But apparently Andy Muschietti is directing it, and we'll get a different Batman. We'll finally get like a Robin that we haven't seen in a long time. You know, they'll have different versions of these characters that we've never seen. So I'm excited to see what they do. Yeah. But
I think Andy Muschietti is way better at doing more drama. Like, you know, It Chapter 1, like, is a fantastic film. There's not a lot of comedy in it, as opposed to The Flash, where they try really fucking hard to make it really funny. And I laughed maybe a total of 2 or 3 times. Like, because it all landed very flat.
What I appreciated, like the humor that I liked was the like I said in my opener, the reliving the origin story. I thought all that stuff was a lot of fun, where he'd be like, okay, listen, you can phase through things, but you can't. And then he'd be like, wah, and then he'd just fall through the floor or whatever. Like that stuff was fun because
it's like
of that
you get an
dynamic.
origin story, but
you get a guided, you get a guided origin story where the supposedly more mature Flash is talking to the younger one. And because if you any of us, if you suddenly had the ability to run at the speed of light, and somebody was like, well, hang on a second, before you do that, you'd be like, shut up, fuck you, and you would just start doing it. And those were the fun moments where
sounds like you're siding with young adult or young Flash.
Young Flash suddenly just starts running because he's like, wait, I have superpowers, and he starts running. And the first thing that happens is he sets the whole fucking city on fire. Like that was terrific, because if that was just the origin, it might be kind of annoying. But because you had the older guy to be like, yeah, idiot, when you run that fast, your clothing burns, and this happens and that happens, and you can't take somebody and run with them because you're gonna make them puke their guts out. Like Flash has already been through those things, so he can try to communicate those things. But the younger Flash has that ADHD where he doesn't listen. He just starts acting. And that worked for me. That was the fun stuff, because it was directly pointing out how obnoxious the Flash is, and had the Flash himself look at those issues head on. That worked. If it was just Ezra Miller by himself doing that, I'd be annoyed and be like, I hate this guy. I hate him. He's not funny.
But two Ezras
what somehow worked. It's like 2 Ezras cancel each other out.
See, for me, it got worse, I feel like. But I mean, because at the beginning of the film, he's that exact character, but then as soon as he sees himself doing it, he's like, ugh.
That's the point. That's the point. It matured him. It was like the moment that you have children, you see your children behaving like you, and you're like, I don't like you doing that. Why? Because it reminds me of me. Don't do it. Like McCurdy.
But then usually don't change like that, though.
You're the only one here with kids. Has that ever happened to you where you're like,
yeah.
Exactly. You're like, you're behaving like me. And
literally, I won't say, okay. It wasn't that I told my daughter not to do the things she was doing. It was just, she was telling me something, and I was like, oh crap, I did something very similar.
You remind me of me. Stop being like me.
And it felt, I mean, really, it just felt cringy. I was just like, oh yeah, that's right, I did do that.
But I feel like,
but it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. But there's other times where my kids have done stuff where I'm just like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're being impulsive. You're doing this. I don't like it. I'm like, oh wait, that's what I do.
Yeah.
But is it what you do, or is what you previously did? Because I will say that my sister always reminds me, because I don't get along with I've gotten along with my nephews recently, but I used to hate them because they were children and they were annoying as fuck. And my sister would remind me, you were exactly like them at your age. You were obnoxious. You were like climbing all over the place, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but I'm an adult now, so fuck them.
Thanks, K1.
But Ezra Miller didn't have, like, he was not like, yeah, I used to be like that 12 years ago. He's like, yeah, I was like that 2 seconds ago.
I do think there's a subtle difference though, and again, like in his portrayal of his younger
It's
self, and his
once
older
he
self,
sees it, though.
there's a different,
Like,
there's
once
like
he
a subtle,
sees
there's a
it.
very
Here's
subtle
my
difference
question.
between those two.
In what movie and how is Flash introduced in this DCU?
BVS.
But like for a split second, you see him
Suicide
like
Squad.
He's not in
No,
Justice League?
it is. He is in Justice. Okay, so in Batman v Superman, and one of the dumbest scenes in that movie, there's a point in the movie towards the end of it where the movie kind of just stops, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I got this flash drive," and Wonder Woman gets this flash drive from Bruce Wayne or LexCorp or something like that. And she plugs in her computer, and in the flash drive, there's all these different files, and all the files have the symbols of all of the
There's
superheroes.
all the
that are
meta
gonna
even
be
though they're
used.
not superheroes yet,
The
they
meta
have
human.
emblems.
They
but
have
whatever.
emblems for all of them. So there's like one for Cyborg, there's one for Wonder Woman, there's one for
Okay.
Aquaman, there's one for Flash. And the first time you see the Flash, it's like they grabbed Ezra Miller right off the street, and he's got long hair, and he's in a gas station, and they just see this shot of him like some robbers come in, and then he just flashes and dissipates, and then comes back like he stopped the crime, like it went really fast. First time you ever see him in these movies, and you're like, okay, that was weird.
It
And
wasn't
then
even
when they
Ezra
did-
Miller, though, right?
No,
Yeah,
that
it
was Ezra Miller.
It was.
That was Ezra
It
Miller.
was?
They had already cast.
Yep.
They had already when they were doing the Justice League movies. I mean, they were like DC was really harping on like, we're gonna make this BVS movie and it's gonna jump us into Justice League. Like they were treating it more like Man of Steel, like BVS is a sequel to Man of Steel.
They're
and then
such
Justice League was gonna be a
short-sighted
sequel to that.
fucking idiots. They're even
And
worse
again,
than the Bond producers.
But
They're so
I do have to
fucking
say,
reactive. Ugh.
But I have to say, it's
Yep.
like it's part of that reaction is because like they've had regime changes so frequently and so quickly that like this group of people are like, oh, we should do this, and then the next group's like, oh, what should we do? Oh, well, the last people were doing this. Like, well, we still got to make money off of this, so like let's still do this, but then let's kind of skew it and make it this.
Is this
So
hate for
you get-
Ezra's portrayal of the Flash
No,
like
he's just
already in existence prior to watching this
it was
movie?
that's how he was in Justice League. Like he was just
Yeah.
But
very.
did you
like,
hate him in
they
Justice League too?
Yes,
He is the worst
they made
part
him
of Justice League.
purposely. They made
He's
him purposely
obnoxious.
to be
The portrayal
obnoxious.
or the
He's like, everything. I'm
character?
funny. Oh, everything's
I
a one
I
I
feel
feel
like
like
really
everyone's
funny.
feel like
so
It's not funny.
serious that you kind of need that.
You know, here's the thing.
Kinda,
Like,
right?
Yes, you
Aquaman-
need
okay,
that,
like,
but he's not the one to do it.
it's
Well,
his.
also it's not right for the character.
his
That's the big
flavor-
thing. If he was a different character, I wouldn't want to punch him so fucking hard.
Yeah.
But like as a Barry Allen, he's awful. Just like Jesse Eisenberg. Again, he can play that style of character in a different style.
But I don't
role,
know
but not
anything about
fucking-
Barry Allen or
And
comic
that's-
Yeah,
books or
I think-
anything like that.
Okay,
so I don't
so
care.
I don't have my nerd glasses on today, but just real quick, Barry Allen usually was always portrayed as more of like the wholesome modern superhero type, like Superman and Batman. They were more upright, standing citizen type.
It's
They
not the
weren't, like-
character. It's not the superhero character.
I get what
It's
you're going to
Ezra
go.
Miller.
I'm just
Ezra
talking to him.
Miller is not a funny
But it sounds
person.
like they're
He
upset
shouldn't be
at
the
Ezra
comic
Miller's
relief.
I have
portrayal
seen,
of
like-
the Flash.
Okay, here's the thing. I think that the studio was like, we want to do a Flash that we want to have our like, because you have a group of characters, right? And you always want to have like maybe the brooding stoic one, but you have to have
Batman.
something to balance that out. So you always have to have the lively, funny character, the comedy, the comic relief, right? They were
Mhm.
like banking that version was going to be the comic relief, and they really put a lot of like money on Ezra Miller. And I just feel like his brand of comedy that he brings to that character isn't funny for everybody, and a lot of times it's cringy and just very, very awkward to the point where I'm like, I don't want to be around you. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
And then he
And
turns
I
out to be
feel
a
like-
weird sex pervert, and you're like,
And they
okay,
could
that
have
makes
gotten
sense.
somebody. I think they could have gotten somebody else to still be that comic. Like, say had they gotten the person I keep saying is you from
Shia?
that movie. No, Charlie Shia. You're Adam
Oh,
Coulter.
Liev
You're the guy
Schreiber?
from. No, Adam. I'm talking about you, Nans. I'm not talking
Oh.
about Charlie.
Oh yeah,
The
yeah,
guy-
yeah.
The guy that I always reference. Hey, say they gotten that guy. Like his comedy probably would have worked better as for what they were going for. I just feel like
the guy from
don't
the
know
guy who
anything
played
about him.
he was in
Adam.
Guardians.
The
He
guy who
played
played
Adam
Adam.
Warlock. Yeah.
That
They
character
had
in
gotten
the Justice
yes.
League?
not that character, that actor. Say
That
they had gotten
actor would
actor,
have been actually funny. He would have
and I
been
think he would have been in that
more
same
awkward and
realm of
on
what they
point.
were trying
Ezra
what?
Miller is not funny. He has zero comedic timing,
just very
even through
cringy.
this movie.
I found
None
him
of
funny.
anything he does is
Them,
funny.
he,
But
they.
again, Kevra, I see you reacting to what I'm saying. My whole point is that having the two Flashes playing off each other is what worked for me. Had this movie only been Flash, the same old Flash we've known through a couple of piece of shit movies, I would have hated this.
Well, it's
I
like
would have
meta
fucking
commentary.
hated
It's like,
it.
God, I'm
It is.
annoying.
And he covers that. He's like, oh my God, you're obnoxious and I hate you, but you're actually me 10 years ago. And that's what, and like Kevin, you're like, so what? He suddenly changes because like 5 minutes ago he was annoying. Yes, suddenly he's dealing with a version of himself that he's looking in the face, who is an incredibly like he's borderline retarded, like
especially because
he's
that one still has his mom, and he's like, you're so unappreciative of.
You have no idea how good your life is. I went back and I ran at this beyond the speed of light to bring our mother back, and you have no idea. But then there's that scene where he's telling Batman what he did, and young Barry Allen is overhears it, and then that's when he's like, "No, I kind of get it now." That's all that stuff is what worked for me. This movie successfully took me from being a fucking Flash hater to being like, I kind of appreciate it now, because both versions, young and old, overcame how obnoxiously immature they always were. And that doesn't mean that I think that I still don't think that Ezra Miller should be the Flash.
But it's almost
this
like this is
movie
the origin
overcame
of
my
the
hatred
Flash
of him.
that these
I
two
fucking
nerds
hated
know.
him up until this movie, and then this movie flipped that on its head successfully. And that's why it's a pleasant surprise.
But maybe if there's let's say there's a sequel to this movie, which I'm not saying that there's gonna be, but if there was, maybe that Flash is the Flash that they know. He's gone through this shit. He's dealt with himself as a person who is unappreciative. He realizes he can't bring his mom back, and the past is the past.
And he happens to be played
way
by
more
Topher
mature.
Grace.
Topher Grace.
Right.
I mean, I accept that over Ezra Miller, like, by far. I mean, because here's the thing. Again, Ezra Miller's a fine actor, and I think he actually is funny. Like, whenever I watched him in Californication, I thought he was charming and fun, and I was like, I wish they brought his character back, but I think they only had him on for, like, one episode. But I really enjoyed him. I couldn't wait to see more of him, and I watched Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I really enjoyed him in that. And when they cast him in Flash, I was like, that's a weird choice.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to like that. And
it's a weird choice.
It was a bad choice whenever he played it in Justice League, both versions, and it was so much worse than this because I couldn't.
You were mad because you got 2.5 hours of just that. Whereas like the Justice League, it's like we get a little bit of Ben Affleck, we get a little Gal Gadot, we get a little Jason Momoa, and then that like this movie, it's like, yeah, you're gonna get. Guess what? You're gonna get 2.5 hours.
And I didn't think either version was good. Yes, the younger version was more obnoxious, but even as the adult version, he was still a whiny little bitch, and I wanted to fucking hit him.
He wants to.
He wants to save his mom.
He's really angry.
Okay, can we?
I mean,
about,
but you don't even earn that,
no,
though, because he's like the whole thing is based on the fact that you have a relationship with your parents. Wouldn't you miss them if they died? That's about it. Like they don't earn like showing a lot of his mom and his parents and like all that relationship. It's really just banking on the fact that
watered down Kevra for a second. Watered down Kevra. The point he's getting at, and this is I do feel this way.
Kevra.
Sleepier Kevra, calmer Kevra, tired. I have kids.
These two are the two Flashes we get in this movie.
Flashes,
yeah,
two Flashes.
Kevra is the 18-year-old one.
To Kevin's 30-year-old. To Kevin's point. To Kevra's point, right? I will agree with them to the point that says there is a moment like for me, I'm like I do feel like. Again, I agree with you. I also cried at the very end of that last moment, that last scene with the mom. I did cry. That was so sweet. But I wish there was moments earlier in the movie where I was like, I was never feeling it until that last scene. And I do wonder if it's just because like I wanted it. Had the movie decided, okay, we're going to focus on this story because this is the core of the story is that the Flash and his relationship with his mother. that is the core, like that is like the thing that he needs, the thing he wants, his goal, right? That's the central thing that he is trying to obtain, is this goal is like, I want to keep my mom, I want to keep this beautiful life. And I feel like we don't see enough of it, to me, to be like, I wanted to see, like, yes, we get to see like the Reader's Digest version of that, like the quick
but no,
spark notes
honestly
of it.
though, what would
And
that
I
have
just
been?
wanted,
What would that have been?
and I agree. Like, I
What
agree
would that
with
have been?
And I don't know. I don't know what that would have been, but I'm just saying, like, I wish that was more in the forefront of this movie and started off with that. And then we get into the superhero antics with him saving the kids and all that stuff, and maybe focus just give it a little more time. Because sometimes I do feel like when you're watching a movie, if you do focus a little bit of time on certain things, sometimes those moments will grow on you a little bit more, and
Let's
versus
backtrack.
trying
Let's
to
lay
spend
it
all
out.
this time.
If you keep the movie the same length, would you remove the dad thing?
Let's
hang on.
No.
Let's lay it out.
The movie starts with an action sequence, is what you're expecting, which is we'll get into, which is like one of the worst things I've ever seen in a superhero movie.
Pretty stupid.
And then it turned
into
a
baby going into a microwave.
Dude, I was giggling so fucking hard. I thought I was gonna have a heart attack. I was laughing so hard, and again, it looks really bad. Me and two other people in the theater, and I was cackling. I was like, I was cackling because the whole thing is that
Mario or Harry Potter CGI for sure.
A fucking entire wing of a hospital collapses. And all these babies start raining out the window, and I was crying. I was crying laughing because I was like, oh my God, all these, like, if the Flash wasn't there, all these babies would have just rained on the street and would have exploded like little like
and he's
blood
on
bags.
low calories too, because he didn't eat that stupid candy bar.
Dude, I was dying. I was dying laughing.
I just wish part of me is like, I wondered if there was a cut of this movie or a version of this movie where we just started with him and the mom, and like we got a little bit more of that, where it's like, this is the relationship. This is like something even more key. Like I get it in the screenwriting sense that you had to write
actual
this. They had
opener.
They had
the
to write
actual opener should have been him and his mom, but the opener was actually an action scene because WB is stupid. And because DC doesn't have DC Studios. DC is run by Warner Brothers, which is run by some corporate front, and it's a bunch of idiots, and it's a boardroom that says we need to have a thing by summer and blah blah blah, and it's a bunch of idiot assholes making the decision.
Charlie, this movie, like they had this movie ready to go for a while. Like
doesn't matter. WB has been butt raping DC for a long time, whereas Marvel had Marvel Studios. Big difference there. Marvel was able to do its own thing before Disney bought it out, whereas Warner Brothers has been raping DC forever, and that's why DC sucks right now.
There's also the issue of that DC, unlike Marvel, where they kept all their characters in house, DC had the unfortunate problem where it's like, yes, while Warner Brothers handles all of DC Comics, there are individuals that all own all those characters. Specifically, Michael Uslan owns Batman, the screen rights to Batman, and John Peters owns the screen rights to Superman. So when you're dealing with more people in the room trying to do some kind of multiverse thing, it's a little mess. Back to our original point, I just felt like I wish, to Kevra's point, I wish that we had a little bit more.
This movie is a mess.
The mom.
It's a mess.
And that's what I wanted.
It is a mess.
Like, Kurt's trying to clean up the mess. He's trying to clean it up.
But here's the thing. I get why they kept the one mom scene that they had to as a kid, was like the whole thing of like it's the theme of the story. Like there's always that moment early on the story where it just sets up or foreshadows something later in the movie. And there's the theme of story. It's like the math problem. He's like, how many answers are there to 24? And he's like, or how many problems get the answer 24? And he's like, there's so many of them. Like
there's an infinite amount of answers.
And then she's just like, okay, sometimes there's a lot of problems in this world, and sometimes you just have to let it go because you're not going to.
There's not an answer.
You're not
going to
every
problem.
And I was also going to say,
there's not a single answer to an infinite problem. Yeah,
right. So that's the mature thing that goes on, and I get why they kept it, and I know why it's like that's like his thing that he learns. I just wish there was something for me to say, like, why was his relationship important to his mother as much as it was, besides I understand it. You understand it. We all understand it because we all had moms, or most people have had moms or had some kind of mother relationship. That's all I wanted. I just wanted
Hey, let's
something
be clear.
underlying.
Scientifically speaking, everybody has a mother. Okay.
Well, Ezra
Yeah.
Miller
Scientifically,
doesn't
I'm
have
just
a
saying
mother?
somebody who is like their specifically their
Yeah.
mom,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
somebody
yeah,
who raised them,
I
like
don't know.
you know, your motherly figure.
I don't
That's
know
all
how
I'm
that
saying.
works.
I just wanted that scene. I just wanted that scene that underlined this is why this is so important to him, and I don't really think we got that exactly. The 24
And then they
thing
completely
kind of
ditch
works
it as well. Like that's the other thing. Like you have that scene, you have the scene where he goes back in time, he's like, "Mom," and then you don't see her again until the very end of the film. Like that's it.
But the movie's so busy trying to figure
I
out
don't think
the
it need
answers of
like
what the
one
problem
once he
is.
goes
think we
back
had
though.
enough
once
moms
he-
to make that last scene emotional. We were all emotional during that last scene, right?
The
So
whole
I think that
whole
scene could have
thing-
been emotional
you-
by
you-
itself.
we had
But you
enough.
don't you cannot have mom throughout the story because the whole thing is I got to go back in time to save mom, and he does
Right.
save mom, but then it comes at a cost, and that cost takes us on a tangent naturally that then needs to be solved. So I don't think there's no version of this story where you have mom throughout. I think I think you throw that aside. It's I need to save mom. Holy shit, I did. And he has that moment where he's like, Mom, oh my God, you're here. Oh my God. And she's kind of confused, like, oh, you're here early. And then young Barry comes home. And then from there, it's putting us, the audience, putting together what the fuck just happened, because we thought he fixed everything scot-free. But then it turns out that now we're in this whole universe where he's like, holy shit, I just showed up on the day where I got my powers. You need to come with me. I need to put you in front of this thing of chemicals.
But
Okay.
We don't know
backtracking.
if
The whole-
he successfully saves his mom in his universe, though, right?
He does. The whole thing is this. The whole
How
thing
do you
is
know that?
Well, you don't. But just hang on.
Okay.
The whole
doesn't
thing
save
is I
his
need to go back in time
he
and
doesn't.
change
This is
one
different.
He
detail
saves his dad.
so that my mother doesn't die. And he does. He shows up where both his parents are alive and he's 18 years old and everything's hunky-dory. Then 18-year-old him comes home and he's talking to his young self and he's like, holy shit, today is the day that I got my powers. You need to come with me. We need to go to this building, the science building, and
Instead
you're
of going on a
gonna
date.
sit in front of a wall of chemicals and a bolt of lightning is gonna come through. And it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd and stupid. That
I like
the
he's
same
like, I want
bolt would
powers.
come
Wait,
through.
I don't want to get hit by lightning.
Yeah. So the whole thing is that by forcing his younger self to get the powers, his powers go away. That's like the perfect narrative beat, right? Where it's like he's like, okay, I need to ensure that I'll have powers.
Well, that's what
in the
keeps him
future.
stuck in that timeline. That's why he can't go back to his normal timeline. Is because he doesn't have powers. That's it.
Because
Like-
when to complete my thought, what happens is that the bolt of lightning that gives powers to his younger self hits him at the same time, and for some it doesn't make
Or
sense.
like goes
but
through
it
him
takes
or something.
it takes his powers away and gives them to younger Barry, which it doesn't make any logical sense, but you can follow it. We're like, okay, I'm down with this story. The original Barry no longer has powers. Young
That's
Barry
all that
has them.
matters.
So suddenly, what we're seeing is a probably the most unique origin story we've ever seen in a superhero story, which is an older guy who suddenly doesn't have them, teaching the younger guy who just got them moments ago how to use them, but he's such an ADHD freak that he won't listen. So he's like making all these mistakes while the older guy's like, dude, you have to let me start completing my sentences. I'm trying to give you wisdom. And that's how older people are. They're like, listen to me. And younger people are like, you're stupid. I know what I'm doing. And then they fuck things up and blah, blah, blah. So that's what's fun about this story is Barry retracing his steps all the way up until we see Barry, what he was doing in 2013 when Zod showed up and all the shit was going on in Gotham, where we saw in Batman v Superman, where all the like planet shit,
world engine.
the world engine
is
shit
terrifying.
that he was doing in Man of Steel, and how that affected Batman, and now we see how that affected the Flash, and we see the Flash like trying to do like he's got like a shitty uniform and he's trying to save people and all that. That stuff I really enjoyed. And again, Kevin, I'm with you. The Flash sucked up into this point. But suddenly I was like, I'm kind of on board seeing these things because you have the older, mature one, even though he matured 5 minutes ago, walking the younger one through the motions where he's like, this is what happened to me, and this is what I learned, and
He's
all
not even
that.
walking him through the emotions though, because he's basically learns those, like, what's happening afterwards. Like he phases, and then kind of Barry like tells him like afterwards, or he runs at super speed. He's like,
Yeah, but that's again
like,
to Charlie's point. He's trying to demonstrate, like, even if he's doing these things afterwards, it's the person who knows the knowledge. It does remind me of a time when you're like, you may not, like, you don't realize how much you know until you have to teach somebody something, because then you're like, oh shit, I actually know a lot about this subject, and then you're trying to explain all these different facets to this person.
And
so no matter like
you watch that,
no matter the maturity. No matter
watch
the
them
maturity
fuck
that
up.
you might have at that moment.
You watch them make the mistakes you made, and you're like, idiot, why'd you make that mistake? It's like, well, you made the same mistake back when you were learning. You made the same mistake.
And but to Charlie's point, I'm just saying you're like, it doesn't matter. He's trying to do it. He's trying to do it. Like, you see him trying to do that, but because this version of Barry is very, very immature, more immature than he is, or as the audience we see Barry as mature, then it's like he's doing everything way too fast. He's not listening. And like slowly and surely, like, we see how his immaturity is kind of his downfall, where you're like, you see how Barry's growth in this movie kind of like makes the end of the movie work, kind of thing. Yeah. It's a lot.
I mean, that's like at the beginning, I kind of had this, my initial thought where I was still in that mindset of like, I'm probably going to be disappointed. The whole movie starts out with Barry going in to order a sandwich, like a really high calorie count sandwich, so that he can be ready for his day, because he has a really high metabolism because he's the Flash, obviously. So so he orders a sandwich that's like covered in sugar and all that crap. And I remember sitting there being like, all of this is kind of none of this makes sense, because if you're the Flash and you can move at the speed of light, how fun would it have been if the opening of the movie was him going to order a sandwich and the guy making the sandwich is really slow and doesn't deliver, and he gets a call from Alfred and it's like, I need you right away. So he starts running to Gotham, and it would have been really fun if on the way to Gotham he was stealing food from people on the street. Like you see people in traffic.
Do like something like you could easily grab like a loaf of bread, or like ran behind the counter and like put like a
exactly.
I was like,
exactly.
Why are you waiting for this fucking sandwich?
Exactly. Like just like okay, you got to get to Gotham right away.
Oh, he
can
did
travel
say
at the speed of light. So just like keep running,
has it ready for
keep
him.
running. And like on the way, it's like all these people are sitting in traffic or they're walking, and he's like stealing their food and he's shoving it in his face. Later, it turns out that the reason they did it, and it doesn't make sense. It's bad screenwriting, but the reason it happened was because later during the baby episode, where hilariously all these young infants are raining from the sky, and he has to bust into a vending machine and scarf a bunch of food to get the energy to save all the babies. Okay, fine. That's why they did it. But it doesn't make sense for the character. The character would have started stealing food from all over the place, including the sandwich shop he was in. He would just he would just like chug a bottle of honey. Like just chug a bottle of honey and eat a loaf, like 17 loaves of bread, and then he would run out. Like that's the stuff where you go, this is stupid. They don't understand the fucking character, and this sucks.
I don't think it's a character.
For the first 5 minutes, I was like, this movie's gonna suck. I was not on board.
I don't think it's a character thing
until he got to Gotham.
Hold on. I don't think it's a character thing. Again, like when you boil down what a story is always a character wanting a goal and then having obstacles getting into that goal. So
later in the fucking movie, he stole food.
I'm getting there. Calm down.
Fucking tell me. Don't fucking tell me there's character shit.
It's not a character. I'm not saying it's no, Charlie. I'm not saying it's a character thing. What I'm saying is like a common misstep is like you will write something like that where you're like, people tell me like, yeah, you need to put obstacles for your character or raise the stakes in that regards. And usually a novice like myself will be like, oh, okay, let's do simple, small things where we're like, he's got to get food to go fast. So we got to make it hard for him to get that food. I think the screenwriters don't do a great job in that because they
Yeah.
do some really cheap, like basically everything they do in the beginning of the movie till the point where Brett busts in. It's like we don't get enough of a reason why the things that you guys are all explaining, like why doesn't he go behind the counter? Why doesn't he do this? He probably would have done that. We don't get those moments because the screenwriter's like, oh, well, wouldn't it be funny if they like he has to get all these things? Like, yeah, that would work, but like you got to make it worse you got to make it a lot harder for him not to be able to get food for whatever reason. Whether it's you don't have enough time. It's just like, and I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying it's not just a character thing. It's just like when you're saying it's a bad screenwriting thing, I'm looking at it like, yeah, it is because
it would have been very.
It's like okay, it is, but it's on the right track.
At the end of the movie,
it's not doesn't make
what's the director's name again?
Andy Muschietti.
Andy Muschietti. He was the guy who he's a reporter with the hot dog. He's holding a hot dog at the end of the movie, and
really?
the Flash steals that hot dog from him. That was the director, and that's what I mean. I saw that and I was like, that's what the opener of the movie should have been. Should have been him going from whatever city he's in to Gotham, and the whole way he's like stealing food from people. Because like maybe he wouldn't have gone behind the counter to steal food because he's an ethical dude and he's not going to steal from an establishment. But maybe he'll steal from people on his way to Gotham because it's the greater good or whatever. And then by the time he gets there, he has to save all these babies.
He won't steal from an establishment, but he'll steal from people. Like
sure.
Not like a corporation. No,
he's running through a mountain.
Yeah,
he steals a hiker's trail mix.
That's what I'm saying. Like because my point being that on the way there, he's like, oh, I see that, I'll steal that and I'll eat that, or and then I'll grab that and I'll eat that. As opposed to going behind the counter and quick making a sandwich. That's my point. It should have been either make the sandwich and eat it, or what I'm saying is it would have been entertaining that on the way to Gotham, he's stealing food from a bunch of people who are like, they're sitting in traffic and they're like, oh, my donut's gone. What happened? That's more entertaining and kind of fun and funny. And then once he gets to the baby sequence, we're off and running, where like the baby sequence turned into one of my favorite things ever. Like at first, as these babies were raining from the sky, I was like, holy shit, the DC has some balls to do a baby blood splatter babies falling from the sky sequence. And then it turned into something that I was like, okay, I'm down for the rest of the movie is going to be fucking weird following the baby rain sequence. And I think Alfred. I think Alfred was even. I think he even almost implied he was going to say baby rain, and then they cut him off.
Baby showers. Baby showers.
Yeah.
Baby shower.
Before McCurdy falls asleep, I want to hear where he puts it on the list.
I'm gonna guess Charlie's here's where I think
do that.
Charlie's instantly gonna be like, here's what, and this is probably where it's gonna land tonight. Honestly, guys, it's gonna land here.
Oh, confidence.
It's gonna be above Spider-Man because Charlie's like, he will not let it go below Spider-Man because it can't go below Spider-Man because of the story. But I'm also on the board where I'm like, maybe somewhere in there. That's probably where you're gonna go. But I could also see I'm not 100% sure it's better than Fast X, but I could also be persuaded to be like, yeah, it might be better. I just don't think it beats Creed 3. I don't think it beats the Creed 3 threshold. I think those movies.
Creed 3 is now. Creed 3 is officially the threshold
real movie.
Of good movies.
It's a real good movie that doesn't rely on silly, like it doesn't rely on silly genre stuff. It's very much a basic, kind of real world story. And I just think the acting's a lot better overall in that movie than this movie by a long shot. And this movie relies on spectacle, much like Fast X does. So I do see it in that realm. And you make a very much and I understand your point where it's between Spider-Man and Across the Spider-Verse. But yeah, this Fast X movie doesn't have as much of a I think that the thing about this movie is just the compelling story of just like, this is a time travel story, much told like Back to the Future 2, but with a little more spice. We're going to switch things up. Instead of Marty McFly coming back and we're like, oh my God, what did I do? It's Marty McFly coming back, and then he meets another Marty McFly, and then they're like, what the fuck did we do? So there's a lot more going on in this one. And I still think it all is decently and well set up. And it's still very entertaining at times. I think the biggest complaints about this movie are going to be the special effects and Ezra Miller. Like, those are just like the top two things where I'm just like, I thought the special, and like when you're making a superhero action movie, those things should be really well done, because it's not going to take, because it takes.
But you know what Charlie's going to say? He doesn't give a shit.
Charlie's going to say stories.
I don't care about fucking special effects. I don't care about. I hope they're good, but I know that they're not always going to be good.
Saying,
but it's like the George Lazenby thing. It's like George Lazenby isn't as good of a Bond, and I'm like, yeah, okay, but like, what are you going to do?
Still good,
you know? Right. Like, I would love to go back in time. I'd love to run Beyond the Speed of Light and recast Ezra Miller. But beyond that, that's like, if you can just,
I just feel like Charlie's going to want the way Charlie is talking tonight. I just feel like he's going to be like, it goes below Creed 3, but above Fast X. But I could be surprised, and he'd be like, no, it's actually below Fast X. So I'm like, that's where it's going to land. That's where I think it's going to land, because
it's hard to. You can't just pick a movie on the list.
I'm not. No, that's like a legitimate, like, looking at this list. I'm like,
no, I agree with everything you said.
Spider-Man, and he's like, and also the reason why we never talked about
the list itself.
The reason why but here's the thing, Charlie. Once again, like the timeline, when you change something on the top, something on the bottom changes too.
Yeah,
that doesn't actually happen. No, but I will say this. I think the ways Charlie. The one reason why Charlie likes this movie so much is because they make a Lord of the Rings reference. So that is the real reason.
He's trying to remember. Look at him.
It's in the when he's showing off the ring.
He does a little Elvish quote.
He does a little impression of Smeagol or Gollum.
Does this guy even like Lord of the Rings?
Yeah,
I don't even remember.
So when he when old Barry is showing young Barry his ring with the suit inside, that is like again, it's a very much a comic book thing. It's a very much a comic book thing, and he pops out, right? Like, he gets the ring and he's like, oh my precious, like he does a little Smeagol impression.
He does a my precious thing.
No, doesn't he say Elvish?
He just does a little.
It's an obvious Lord of the Rings thing.
Yeah,
it's Charlie apparently missed.
And it's the same studio, so they're like, we need to get away with it.
I would have to watch it again, because like, it was probably like a lamer reference if I didn't pick up on it.
It was just very obvious. It's like, you have a ring, it's a Warner Brothers project, like, he's gonna end the movie takes place post Lord of the Rings, he's gonna make a Lord of the Rings reference.
No, but like, the movie takes place it does take place in 2013, so
yeah, that's what I was saying.
If there was a blatant reference, then I have no excuse other than the fact that I was crying tears the whole movie.
Tears.
Because the story is so significant. I was so emotionally
McCurdy, you gave us your guess as to where Charlie's gonna put it.
That's what I'm saying. I think
where would you put it?
Like, yeah, here's the thing. Like, Charlie and I will always disagree on this, and Charlie's thing is like, no, it's always the story. I'm like, yes, the story matters a lot, but again,
hang on, pause. Pause for 1 second.
We aren't pausing. I'm Chucky Rants now.
I just finished the fucking Quantum episode, and it's just like, it's hysterical, because apparently what's happened is now you know my mind better than anybody. So you're like AI. I don't even have to rank anything anymore, because I'm just like, it's like Ryan, McCurdy AI. Where
Charlie,
would Chucky Rants put it?
Actually,
and you do it like I'm like yeah, above or below Fast X, and then you fucking just do it. You just know, and then
it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, apparently.
It was just a lot. There was a lot of good
hell.
There's a lot of context clues, and I think we all three agree. I think
hard on that either.
No, we all agree that Creed 3 is a pretty overall solid movie. It has its problems, but I feel like the acting and and some of the directing is not as good as the other Creed movies. But we all agreed it's a very good movie this year. And Fast X is just hyper. like it has a really good performance by Jason Momoa. It's just hyper over the top spectacle. We all know what it was going to be when we go into these movies. And Spider-Man, you and I are like, this is definitely a better movie than Shazam Fury of the Gods. We at least thought so. Charlie didn't agree. So my assumption would easily be that like Charlie's going to say it's above Spider-Man because he's already made that clear. And I think we all think it's below Creed 3. So it's either above or below Fast X. Like that's it. That's where it's at.
Yeah.
I don't know which one it's going to be. That's going to be up to you, Nancy. Like, where are you going to put it? Because I'm just going to tell you, I don't care at this point because the movie itself, again, leaves me in disappointment because I do feel like, Charlie, to your point, there's some really good, strong story stuff that I actually did like.
But it's a goddamn
Kevra's
mess.
point,
The movie,
to
like,
Kevra's
It's a
point,
mess.
I can't say
it's
enough.
messy.
The movie is a
the
goddamn
CGI
mess.
and the performance. Some of the
My eyes
performances
do
are really
glaze
not my
over
favorite.
when they start fighting. I did like Barry teaching Barry
I
how
liked
to
I
do
liked the
fighting.
fights.
Yeah, it was like,
But,
hey, dude,
like,
I
no,
liked
you,
it.
like your suit
Superwoman
does this, you
fighting
gotta
what's
do
his
this
face,
shit.
whatever.
I liked the fights in
Yeah.
this movie, and like I thought I was like, oh,
I
this is
didn't-
really cool.
I just mean like the
Um,
big fight. It was like, okay, we're just running around in this bad CGI,
But like
and
they were like trying to set up a thing
Fine.
with it, and they were trying to kind of demonstrate.
Give
they
me
felt
more
like they were
Barry
trying
Barry.
to demonstrate how does the Flash fight? What is the Flash's techniques on fighting versus like Batman's going to be easy.
'cause
Like
apparently you
quick
can't
punches.
kill any
Supergirl's
of
going to use Superman and Supergirl are going to use brute strength because they have
Zordo's
that.
people
So
or
then, like,
whatever.
where do you go with the Flash? Like, yes, he's super fast. Like, how can you utilize that? And they're like, oh, well, he can create all these like electrical bolts with his super speed and creating all this energy. You know, he can quickly punch people in unexpected ways. He can phase through people. There were some really cool ways, but
Okay, wait, let me
Louis
say
D
real
is
quick.
saying
Let me say real
that
quick.
Fast X was better.
As we're, you know, whatever, we'll rank in a minute. So we talked about Nick Cage already, but did you guys catch what's his name? Nikolai Coster-Waldau, however the fuck you say his name. The Game of Thrones guy. What's his name in Game of Thrones again?
Jamie?
Jamie. Randomly showing up in this movie.
What? No, I didn't catch that.
Which part?
He
Is
had
he in one of
he
the
had
other
a-
versus balls?
No, he had a very obvious cameo where
It wasn't
I
that
think it was
obvious.
after young Barry got his powers, and the first thing he did was steal food from a guy. It was like a guy on the street who was like going to eat something,
Probably
and
a
he
hot dog.
jacked his food, and it was Nikolai Coster-Waldau, however the fuck you say his name.
I
Didn't
And
know
then
that
in
at
the
all.
special thanks, it thanked him.
Thanks for
He's
letting us
playing the
steal
next
your hot dog.
Superman.
He was just like a high class cameo out of nowhere. Just a guy who was like a guy on the street,
That's a well done cameo. I did not notice.
which surprises me because he's got a very recognizable face. So, you know, but it
Did
was
he have
it was,
like a metal hand on? Because then I would have noticed.
he was just a guy. But then I mean, in the special thanks, though, they even thanked Jack White. So I was like, wait, was Jack White in this movie too? I didn't.
No, his music's in the movie.
Okay,
which is
that was
funny 'cause it's-
my assumption.
No.
was it was more
Yeah.
musical,
If you
but-
watch the fight when they're fighting Zod and all of the Kryptonian army, like that's Jack White's music,
Zod.
which is ironic because he did the music for I think Justice like one of the trailers.
Princess
Because they were using
Zelda?
the Seven Nation Army stuff in a lot of the early Justice League trailers.
All right, quick question though for you guys. So the whole
Alright,
thing with
what's your
Flash's
question?
backstory was when I was a young Flash, I went and protected. There was a father-son duo in Gotham or Metropolis or who cares, and I managed to save the son, but the father was killed. He was crushed under some debris or whatever. And then they briefly showed them in this movie where it was like we're reliving those events. And did father and son just get away? It was just like in this iteration, dad didn't get caught under a bunch of debris, and they're like, "Let's go."
Well, they did.
Yeah, that was weird.
I don't know.
That's a mess. That's one of those because I thought they were gonna pay it off, and you're gonna see
Yeah.
that event happen again where he gets to save them both this time. Or
Yeah,
it's the young Barry like showing
yes.
like he's really proven himself by saving But they just fucking never do anything with it because the
I
movie's a
think
mess.
I don't think it's
the movie is a mess.
I don't think it's the movie's a mess. I think by that point the movie, like getting that close to the third act of the film, they're like, we've got to deal with this other thing that we've.
No, I
already
think
set
the
up in
movie's a
story.
mess.
It is a mess, but it's like
mess.
they're at the point where they're like they can't pay off every little thing that they've already set
But
up.
they
So
also
they get
didn't
to
need to
the
put
point
it
where
in
they're
there
like,
to begin with.
yeah, but they wanted to at least show how they wanted to give something emotional for Barry to understand like where his head's at as a superhero and like how he feels. And
It
he's
could have
like,
been something
you know,
they
how
didn't.
he
It
feels
wouldn't
like,
like be like it was
to
something
change
that
my underwear.
It could have
take me
easily
to
been
the
something where
fucking
he was too scared to go fight on Zod. It could have been like something that wouldn't have been like, oh, you're gonna see this again later. Because I think every one of us had that thought of like, oh, you're gonna see them again whenever the world engine is fucking shit up.
Right.
But it was basically just like, no, but you could have done a moment that you
Barry
didn't expect
1
to come
saves the
later.
kid, Barry 2 saves the dad, and it would have been like, oh, what a cool moment that they kind of rewrite history. Because he said he's like I saved the kid, but I didn't save the dad. And but it's like that wasn't paid
one
off.
thing I didn't tell you.
It's one of those canon events.
One thing I didn't tell you. So this whole script got rewritten.
That one guy
somebody
died.
else. There was another writer, but there's like 4 story people on this film, which we already talked. Actually, the guys who wrote Dungeons and Dragons were one of the people because we talked about them, and I think they were also the directors on that movie. We had talked about them a couple months back. They had actually created the story or written a version of this before. Also, Job Hansen, I think is his name, Joby Hansen. He was one of the writers on the Transformers movie from last week. He also contributed to the story. They have a completely different screenwriter who basically took that and compiled it. My wonderment is that did these guys have something what you guys are talking about with like them saving this, and then that kind of got lost in the shuffle of the new screenplay, and they were like, yeah, it just kind of happens, and they don't really go. They don't do more than that. Was it a deleted scene? Who knows?
Wasn't there 2 competing scripts at one point?
Yeah, there was. There's so much I did not touch on, like how this movie, because they like the funniest thing about this film was that they announced this movie right when the Flash TV show was going to come out. They were like, yeah, we're making a Flash movie with Ezra Miller.
Wow, that's a long time.
And then they're like, then by the time the Flash movie or the Flash TV show ends, this movie finally comes out. And it's just like, that shouldn't have happened, but somehow it did. And they had multiple different directors, and it changed hands so many times that like this thing has become, it's a mess. It's a mess.
It's a mess. Yeah.
It's a mess.
So, but that's where we're at.
Where
when
would
it
you
comes
rank
to when it comes to ranking the mess? Is it enough of a mess to put it lower on the list?
Is the core of the movie, the story, the meatball in the spaghetti?
The meatball in the spaghetti. What a great fucking analogy.
Is it good enough to raise it?
Then when you put it in those terms, that's when I go, maybe it's lower than that.
Well, here's the thing: if Charlie thinks that Spider-Man should be actually lower, maybe he's like, well, yeah, maybe it's lower than the things below Spider-Man because of the fact that.
But that's why Nans and I were like, we never agreed on that. We were just like, no, we think Spider-Man was a better movie overall than a lot of the other movies. And so this is what makes it hard and this is why like some people say, yo, you should do a tier list. I'm like, fuck that.
Fuck tier list. Fuck tier list. Spider-Man went above.
Tier list would be too easy.
Spider-Man was like a production value type of thing, where it's like, dude, the animation good. Oh, animation good. Oh yeah,
well,
good
you
animation.
wouldn't know anything about that. So anyway, yeah, it would. But you know, we enjoyed. I think we enjoyed it a lot more. We enjoyed Across the Spider-Verse a lot more than some of the other movies on this list. But of course, we weren't like it's way up in the upper echelon of the more complete movies. So when you talk about it this way, I'm like,
I was pissing.
Like, there's part of me where I'm like, I don't know, maybe does it go lower than the Spider-Man? But again, like, if I'm not gonna go too hard on you guys, I mean, I could just see like if Nan's
it sounds like me and Charlie can overlook a lot of the stuff that you guys can't.
Where we're like, I am like, it's very.
I'm probably closer to Charlie, and I still don't think
like,
you said like, are you below the Megan missing threshold, or where?
That's where I'm like, that's where I'm like, is it below Megan missing? Because again, like those movies are again very engaging, very clear cut. But this one does have a very compelling story, and I really did like their take on the
about
multiverse.
unlike every other movie
It
on
is
this
about-
list.
It's about well, so is every other movie on this list.
Huevos has
it's-
expanded his range. He went from 8, 10, 11 to 7 to 11. Huevos, we're definitely probably going to settle in the higher end of that range, right? Because Charlie's going to want to argue this until McCurdy wants to go to sleep.
I already want to go to sleep, so
I know.
I want Charlie to come back so we can argue this. To be like, he'd be like,
let's pick something else. Like ignoring Spider-Man, Dungeons and Dragons. What do you think about this versus Dungeons?
Oh, I don't know.
Is there
Charlie's
what movie does it
where
become clear one is better than the other?
It's just hard when we put Spider-Man where we put it, and then we see this movie and we're like, well, Charlie's like, well, it does a better job with the multiverse story stuff than Spider-Man, and it is like a complete reversal because Spider-Man's
beautiful,
shining,
not
grace,
much of a story. This one,
it just
pretty
feels
good
like
story.
Yeah,
everything else is kind of not so great.
It's much more clear-cut story in this movie versus the Spider-Verse. Let's put it that way.
And story is why we watch movies, right? That's why we go to the theater.
That's why we watch movies, man.
I want to see if
Charlie's just sitting back in the darkness going.
No, he's pissing.
Yes.
I never piss.
No, where's a cup? He goes. He's.
You guys aren't wrong. My whole thing is fuck Spider-Man. I'm above Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Let's say
it versus
in a universe where Spider-Man isn't on this list at all.
I don't care.
Do you put it above Shazam: Fury of the Gods?
Is it definitely below Fast X?
I do.
Yes,
I put
right?
it above Shazam.
Is it definitely below Fast X?
Shazam. The problem
is
with
definitely
Shazam
below Creed.
As like a bad guy, right? Whereas this has
Shazam's pretty clean.
The bad guy in this movie is Barry himself, which I'm all about. Like, is it a confused fucking mess? Yeah, but that's like the point, right? The point is you end up being, when you do this temporal paradox shit, you end up becoming your worst enemy. And I appreciate that. And it was at a certain point, once all those metal things started embedding themselves into young Barry, I was like right away, I was like, okay, he's the monster. Because the whole time you're like, when is the monster guy who punched him out of the temporal thing? When is that monster going to show himself? And it was like, oh, he's going to be the monster. And then like a minute later, he shows himself, and he even says, he's like, oh, I'm you, even though I was here before you even made me. And it was like, okay, like, again, Basil exposition. Don't think too hard on this and just enjoy yourself.
We never got an answer to the question I wanted an answer to, though. Like, how long had that guy been at it? It's almost like a Doctor Strange. And he can see all eventual possibilities.
Been at it forever. He's like, I've been at it for.
But like again, Nans, I talked about that. Go watch Nans when you get done with this. Just get on Disney Plus. Go watch Buzz Lightyear. Watch the end of that movie. That's your answer, because like that's basically the same. Like it's almost like I'm not.
Is that movie any good?
It's okay. Some people say it's terrible. I was just like,
maybe
it's
I'll watch it.
That movie is just confusing for Toy Story fans. I don't care, but the story in itself.
If you're super invested in Woody and that shepherd lady,
it doesn't matter. Like the Toy Story stuff doesn't matter. If you just focus on the Buzz Lightyear stuff, it's fine. The point of that story is Buzz Lightyear has to travel back. Keeps wanting to travel back in time to fix this thing that happened that he made a mistake on, and he does it. But the problem is he can't travel fast enough, so he keeps going
out of the grabber machine
and more forward in time. And he does it so many times, he gets older and older. And as he gets older and older, technology gets better, but he becomes like a shadow of himself, very much like this movie that we talked about. And he's done it so long into the future that now he's this old Chucky Rance fart in the very distant future.
I'm always the bad guy.
I don't give a crap about me.
You have opinions on movies.
It doesn't matter.
We never told anybody this, but really, Nans is actually young Chucky Rance.
Yeah. I would.
Nans,
totally,
you're young.
I don't know about McCurdy and past McCurdy, but I would bang Super Nans. I'm just saying. I would get with a younger version of myself.
Are you played by Ezra Miller?
I personally would pass, but I see where you're coming from.
Okay, wait.
As
Okay,
soon as there
okay,
was
okay.
mom stuff in here, I was like, Charlie's gonna like it.
Fuck Spider-Man. This movie's
Okay,
above
but
Spider-Man.
While you were
For me, it's
peeing,
above
let's
fucking
say Spider-Man
Spider-Man.
wasn't on the list. Just ignore
It
Spider-Man.
doesn't matter if Spider-Man's not
Look
on
at
what's not. It's
just
on.
Fast
Fast
Shazam.
X, Shazam, and Dungeons.
I
Like,
still
You would
think
still,
like
you would still put it above.
is there a
Shazam,
clear
because
delineation?
Dungeons and Dragons is like, oh, no romance should ever exist. Even though we had some fun, blah
it's
blah
not
blah.
even
Who
a scary movie,
cares?
but whatever,
Who
dude.
cares?
I like
This is
Dungeons.
going up against
Yeah,
Fast
it
X.
didn't need the romance.
Like this goes right
It's
up
about
against
Dungeons
Fast
and
X for me,
Dragons.
where it's like an
All right,
enjoyable movie that is
Charlie,
flawed.
let me ask you this
Well,
question.
this one
If
has
you-
better story than Fast X.
Right.
I'll say
So
that.
you think the story? Yeah, because I don't think Fast X story is very compelling. To be honest, it's just more like let's fucking race cars
Yeah.
and have a
There's
villain.
Dominus.
It's basically it goes down to like we're gonna fight.
That's
You're
about
gonna.
it.
You've been following this soap opera with cars for not 10 movies, and now we're gonna
That's
bring.
quite the compliment.
And now we're gonna bring in this villain that you've never seen before, and
Yeah.
he's gonna mess things up. And I'm like,
Who
it's not
happens to be
much-
Aquaman?
But that's about it. That's literally about it. Like there's not
Yeah.
much more than that. Versus this movie, it's like trying to tell more of like a more of a philosophical. If you could change the past, would you do it? And if you did do it, what would the consequences be? And like, there's like, I don't think there's just more there. Charlie's already quit, and he doesn't care.
No,
Doesn't give a shit.
McCurdy still hasn't said where he personally would put it.
I don't
Everything
really
you
matter
just
where I
said.
put it.
Everything you
does.
just said convinces me. I'm convinced.
You said what
You
you
have
think
convinced-
Charlie will do. He's
You
got
have-
a long
you
time
have-
to type. McCurdy, go.
Buddy, you're not doing it right.
What's
Oh,
he
wait.
not doing?
9/11.
Oh,
Big
oh, no.
9/11.
Yeah, 9/11, because never forget.
Wow.
Why
you
is
know
10
we're,
indented?
you know we're real messed up millennials when we make jokes like that.
I've been drinking all
9/11,
day.
'cause you know, never
I have-
forget.
All the excuses. Here we go. I got it. Uncle Charlie was top notch today. Y'all should have seen me. I was in top form. Go ahead.
Yeah, Nans, if I was actually choosing it, I'd probably say it's right below Spider-Man, just because of the spectacle versus the spectacle versus the story, and how much of this is such a blunder in that one
Because both
department.
you and
The
I
filmmaking,
didn't
like again, like
dislike
the
Spider-Man
form
as
of
much
how
as
you
Charlie
make a
did.
movie. It's like yes, there's the you must make a movie this way, like you must tell this story, but it's the form of how you tell that story. And I do think like Spider-Man excels drastically better at trying to tell the story it does try to tell, which is not as clear cut or as compelling. I
There's
guess
no
without
story
Charlie-
in
No,
Spider-Man.
shut up, Charlie.
There's
Shut
no
up.
story in Spider-Man.
Get off your soapy box. I'm gonna buy you a soapy.
We're in India verse. Hey, we're in
It's not that
whatever
bad.
verse.
It's
drink your beer.
Oh.
Drink your beers. Drink your beers. Anyway, what I'm
You
saying
can
though
really
is that
chunk
this
these
one
the list
you can
up,
get
which we already
behind
have.
movie
But
does
like
a better job. I'll give this
as
movie
the
this.
list stands
It
now,
does,
8
as far as Metaverse
through
movies,
12.
As far as
that's a
Metaverse movies
chunk
goes,
that all
Flash
blends
does a much
together.
better job of like at least giving you the exposition, but not
loves
force
his
feeding you the
mom.
spaghetti. So you're like, oh, okay. Like I kind of I'm starting to understand how this is all working. It's a mess because, of course, like again, there's a lot of little pieces that I'm just like, yeah, I wish. And I do feel like I still feel like it's kind of like it feels like a hanging Chad when you never find out who killed the mom, because it
what?
feels very odd and off point. Like it
I
just
don't give a
feels
shit. I
weird.
never thought
I did-
once about
I
it.
just
Like,
always thought
oh,
that
who
was
actually
movie.
killed her? Who cares?
I can't.
I will say I disagree with
I don't
McCurdy
care
with that.
either,
I
'cause
do
I don't
think
know
that the
about
first
the
movie
comic.
should have been about that. But again, I think that's just because you would
You're living in the
establish
world where
the-
you think there should be 2 movies, and I'm just like, it doesn't.
not
that
necessarily
doesn't
no,
matter.
not 2 movies, but you set up
It
the
doesn't
relationship more than what this fucking movie does. Because
Well,
all this
they
movie
did
does
that.
is like say,
They did
yeah,
that
I
in
had 2
Justice
parents
League.
and one of them died,
Yeah,
and now I'm
they
gonna go
did
back
that.
in time.
They did
Like
that.
that's
They
what?
did that in the Justice League. Just wanna- they did that. They did that. They
So you
actually
guys
did it
sleeping in
back-
the same
What?
bed tonight, or
No, I'm not. I'm leaving this godforsaken Mario
Okay, wait.
infested house.
Hang on,
and I'm gonna
dude.
go. It's a go.
Dude,
Oh, wait.
so I
You
just
go,
went ahead and
"Let's
plugged
go!"
this in because I thought that we were all, in agreement. Are we?
I'm in agreement. I'm not disagreeing.
Are
with
we
you.
good?
Nan's
Like,
just
is this
fine.
final? I just went ahead and
Yeah,
did it because
I
I
don't-
thought this is where we
If-
were.
if-
I don't
Who's just a
disagree with
guest?
this.
He just a
It's
guest who
below the
comes in and
Creed
is like, I got opinions.
threshold. Fast
He
X
hasn't
is
seen the other
just
movies.
cars at the end of the day.
Like, I think regardless of how you
Your
feel
words
about
are
Ezra, because again,
This makes
Kevra,
sense. It
I'm
makes
with you.
sense.
I think Ezra Miller from the get-go, I was like, why? This guy sucks as the Flash. This is a terrible choice.
Disagree.
But this movie changed my mind for this movie alone. Like, anything coming beyond here, he still has to prove himself. But him facing himself was enough for
Won't be
me.
hired again.
And when it comes to it beating stupid fucking multiverse Spider-Man, yeah, fuck that movie. That movie blows dick. Fast X is entertaining as hell, but this had that movie may be entertaining, but it doesn't have any emotionality to it, whereas this did. Again, I can shamelessly be like,
absolutely.
yeah, him saying goodbye to his mom had significance.
It can't be
had
understated
significance.
how little fighting action is in this movie.
Yeah, and I'm
is-
good with that.
It is just about Barry with Barry.
It's
Barry
back to-
training Barry.
Well, there's
Like,
a lot of
great.
fighting in this
Barry
movie. What are you
training
talking
Barry
about?
There's
is
not that
cool.
much fighting.
There's a lot of fighting. What are
We
you
get the
talking about?
action
There's a
sequence
whole-
at the beginning with the baby shower. We get
Okay.
a little bit of they have to go get Superwoman out of wherever she is.
Yeah, that was. A
and
good
then they
sequence
fight
amount.
what's his face
They fight the Kryptonians.
very briefly,
That was a
but
lot.
with a lot
That
of
was a lot.
one-on-one Barry and Barry.
There's a lot.
It's
of
Barry and
Would you
Barry. It's
also
just
consider,
Barry
like,
trying to
action
save his
I think
mom
sequences-
it's
with
just
Barry.
about as much as any other movie. I just don't see where you're like, there's not a lot of action. I'm like, again, that's when that's
There
that's
could have
the
been a
moment where I'm
lot
like,
more, and I'm glad
sometimes
there
when you
was.
count it. Well, you didn't need it because you were like they're so focused on what's going
Yeah.
on.
But
That's
there were
exactly
also
right.
more action sequences because there was also him traveling
This
back
movie
in
is
time.
Back to the Future
There was
2.
also
with
young Barry
superheroes.
learning about his powers and how he got his powers. You also
Yeah.
had the whole sneaking into like that corporation, the lab, or no, it was the CPD, like Central Police Department.
Nice
I think
hat,
it was.
McCurdy.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And I mean, anytime he was running around doing his power stuff, that's that's action. Like, it may not him be battling people, but it's still action. Just saying.
What? How does I forget how in the very beginning he even discovers that he can go back in time? Why is he running so fast?
He did that in Justice
He
League.
runs out. Remember,
No, in this movie,
no,
it's like post baby
this movie,
He was
shower.
not-
talking to his dad, and his dad was
He's
talking
mad.
about what happened to their
Okay.
mom.
'Cause I
and
knew
he
it was an
so
emotional
pissed off.
thing.
He was so pissed
It's an
off that he
emotional
just started running.
He went Super Saiyan,
He went Super Saiyan.
Well,
he
then-
just
but
started
you also remember
running,
he's
and
mad
then he
because
ran
and
he
then
so
also
he's
realized
quickly.
Goku trying to
No,
teach
No, he gets mad.
Gohan,
He
like, yo,
remembers
you gotta
that,
kind of get a
but
grip.
no, guys, we're missing the
It's
point.
accidental.
Mighty Ducks 2 is not the best Mighty Ducks movie.
Which one is?
Mighty Ducks
We
1 is
talk
actually the best
about how
Mighty
we're gonna do a
I
live
could have
stream
sworn
where
you
we
said
we're
3
like,
was the best.
Ranked is going to talk
No,
about their
it-
next
2 is
the
no,
next
2 is
series
better
they're
than
going to
3.
rank,
3 is
and we're
not.
going to be like, we're doing Mighty Ducks.
3 is not a good movie.
Anyway,
Mighty Ducks, guys, Mighty Ducks, it is a descending. It's 1, 2, 3. That's the
No,
order.
it's 1, 3, 2.
Most people will say 2, 3, 1, 2.
2
Most
is a
people will
piece
say
of-
2, 1, 3.
I'm
2
gonna
is
piss.
the best 2 is like the shining star in the series. Most
I'm
people
gonna piss
really like.
myself.
Kevin, you're not a normal person.
That's fair.
You know this, but
Yeah.
2 is like is the one
Mighty
that's got
Ducks
all the
2.
fun stuff that are like, oh, it's got all these fun different characters, and they all have their quirky little moves that they do on the ice rink, and it's silly, and you're like, okay, I'm on board for this. But like when you actually come down to the story, it's like this is really poorly written. The first one's got a story about a drunkard who has to teach a hockey team. That's more interesting. That's a good story. The third one is dumb because they don't even play hockey for half the movie, and like it's a lot of just
About the team.
it's a lot of just being like, oh well, we couldn't get Mom Bay back, so like we're gonna like kind of put him in the movie, but kind of not. It was a mess. That one's a mess. I don't like that movie. Second one, it's fun. I still like
No,
2.
in the seventh
it's
movie,
actually
they
1.
get into the multiverse where it's all about the ducks and
Listen,
the geese and
listen.
the
Lord of the Rings
sparrows.
is actually one of the worst series of all time. I just want to let you know that. It is like the worst thing you could ever put your kids through. It teaches bad morals. It's, I mean, trying to be like taking a ring to a volcano. Like, what are we teaching our children here?
Okay, wait,
Like,
who
this
is it?
the
Was
worst
it
thing?
Emilio Estevez is the coach?
Emilio!
But in the multiverse, it's Charlie Sheen Charlie Sheen is the coach, and he
It's definitely
rapes
a
all the
shit.
I'll
kids
watch
because
that.
he's a weird
Hey,
sex
I want to
pervert.
watch. I want to watch that one where he's like,
Yeah.
I want to
Well,
watch. I wanna
maybe
watch the
maybe
version
Ezra will be
where
in
they
Mighty
take
Ducks
the
4.
plot. They basically take the plot, but it's like instead of him getting in trouble for drinking, he's getting in trouble because he keeps buying hookers. Like, and then he like there's the scene where like he was like the whole hockey stuff that still happens, right? So
Ezra
like,
Miller
Charlie Sheen, Charlie
Ezra
Sheen,
Miller
a
comes
whole
in.
team of
but like he has
Mighty
a
Ducks.
he's got sex addiction, and then he actually like
Yeah.
takes
Ezra?
some of the players to a hotel where he's like, yeah, guy, or he takes him to a strip club. He takes him to a strip club. That's what happens. He takes players to a
what
strip
is
club,
happening?
and then like there's a scene with that. Like Disney would be like that. Disney wouldn't approve of this.
They
but
wouldn't sign
probably,
off
like,
on this.
like
No,
20th
no,
Century
no.
Fox.
Give it
aired
5
in
years. Disney's going to
1992.
be all about
WB
it.
though,
Yes.
No,
Yes.
Disney's going to
WB
be all
might
about
be
it.
all for this.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Uh-huh.
but yeah.
Look, the point is D2 sucks because Bombay has to learn the fucking exact same first movie. He goes from being a
Nice.
douchebag hotshot lawyer to be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna become a good guy after like watching these kids and blah blah blah. To a douchebag coach in the second one.
Well,
Like,
you're
you know
simplifying it. You're simplifying
I
it.
am a little
You're simplifying it. to the
Mighty
point
Duck
where
movies are
it's not
deeper
making
than
sense.
you're really
You're
letting
saying
on.
that it's just like, oh, he's a douchebag. You're missing the whole thing where he's like, he's learning how to be a good coach and be a good person. And then the second movie is him trying to imitate and trying to be this image of a coach that he thinks he needs to be, but he's not, because he realizes like, oh wait, it's about the team and I shouldn't be a complete asshole. But it's like a different reason not to be an asshole. It's like you need to be an ass. Like, don't be an asshole, but like be an asshole for a different reason. Like that's the reason why you shouldn't be an asshole. You know, like. But then again, like it is better. I do think the Mighty Ducks movies actually are better than the Lord of the Rings movies because they have hockey, and Lord of the Rings doesn't have hockey. It just has like small people.
Well, it depends on how you define hockey.
Small
It has
people?
small people.
What do you mean small people?
Small people with rings. Like that's it. Like that's the only thing.
Are you talking about ducks or Lord of the
And
Rings?
like that's cool. Like I'm not against it. It's
Aren't
just
rings basically just pucks, but you wear. them on
yeah,
your
but you
fingers?
can't. You just play it, put them on your fingers.
Yeah.
You can't play hockey with rings. And it's like, well, what? Like who? Like I still don't understand like the ring of power. And it's like someone who's like, it makes you invisible. I'm like, okay, it doesn't like shoot lightning bolts or no, it makes you invisible. I'm like, okay, dude, like I get it, but like,
It's
how
the
does
ring of
that?
power?
How is that do anything with power? Like, how is that like powerful? Like how do I garner power from becoming invisible?
Does it help you avoid back taxes?
like that? It doesn't. Because
Like, what
you're
does it
still there.
do?
They have the
Nothing.
paperwork. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
you can do. But
Yeah.
playing hockey for a junior hockey league,
Yeah.
that could do something. That can do something. That can change your life.
You're right. Mighty Ducks 1 and 2 are better than
all right.
Lord of the
So
Rings.
I want a
And we've
Mighty
settled
Ducks-
that. We have settled that.
Mighty
I
Ducks
want a
1
Mighty
through
Ducks
3,
movie.
better
I want a
trilogy
Mighty
than Lord
Ducks
of the Rings.
4. Mighty
Yeah.
Ducks 4, but with Charlie Sheen as the coach.
Anyway,
Yeah.
this
Ezra
Someday
clearly
Miller
is
we're
just
as-
teasing
Ezra
at the
Miller
guys,
things
as,
we're
like,
doing in the
the
future.
ringer.
Someday when we're
Cool.
all 105 years old and we've ranked every
Like I am right
franchise,
now.
then we'll start ranking
Never
franchises against each other until we're all dead.
Hmm.
Until that happens, though, 2023 fucking sucks, and we're looking
It's not
at
didn't suck. I think this has been a very thoughtful experiment. In
2023
And
has
really
been nothing but family. We've been saying this. Every single fucking
But
movie on this list is
we-
about
we might be
family.
like-
The Flash is about family. It's about his mom.
It's about one
It's
member of
about
the
his
family.
mom. It's about his mom and his
Well,
dad.
no, 'cause I mean,
His
really,
mom
he goes
and his
back and does it
dad.
because of his dad.
Air wasn't about
honestly.
family, unless your
It's
corporate
roughly
family
about family.
is
It was
nice.
about Michael Jordan's mom.
Yeah, if I do this,
Oh,
watch this.
crap,
Watch
you're
this.
right, man. It is about Michael Jordan's mom.
If I do this,
Looks like you're peeing in a bottle.
if I do this, no, I look like
It does look like he's paying in a bottle.
I look like Robert De Niro.
Okay.
Everything's about family. Everything's about family. Okay.
Are you a meet the fucker?
Are you gonna meet me? Hey,
You want to be part of this family?
hey.
We're weird.
Could you milk me?
We're rich, but we're weird.
Could
I
you
got
milk
no
me?
pleasure. You milk me?
Could you milk
I
me?
feel like we're just
I have
spinning
nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
We're
now.
just
We are
elongating this episode.
We are running in circles right now.
We've done the Speedy Gonzalez thing before, okay?
We've done that. We're doing this.
Just for shits, because
Are we? Do we have a toast? Did anyone queue up a toast?
Yes, we do. We do have a
We
toast.
do.
And here's the thing: I'm gonna backtrack real hard because we've been really hard on this movie for
Backtrack quick
various
and
things.
hard.
The thing we just kind of very much glossed over in this movie was Michael Keaton. Now, Michael Keaton, again, we talk a lot about Ezra Miller and how he's not our favorite part of this movie. Michael Keaton, on the other hand, it's Michael Keaton. Like, it's just a little like again, his
It's
presence
Charlie's
in this
dad.
movie. His presence in this movie is just a little burst of nostalgia, but I do think he still got it. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm here for Michael Keaton Batman. Like, it's still a good time.
He
still
looked
brings
old
it.
in that suit.
He
but it
gets
was
nuts.
Great.
He gets nuts. You know, I was for
you
it. I
want
was
to
like,
get
"This is
nuts?
fine.
Let's get nuts.
Let's get nuts.
Yeah.
Fine."
Let's get nuts.
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna like cut to the Flash eating nuts because there's a lot of calories in nuts, but whatever.
Why would you?
I
bring that
guess
up?
I'm an idiot.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, Nance. Shut up with your ideas,
Just
you
say,
fucking
shut up.
asshole. Shut your face.
Sorry, I thought Ezra should have been eating some cashews.
Batman.
Brazil nuts.
This movie didn't have
The one
that
with the-
high of a mind overseeing it. but where it
It's a
counted,
laughing bag.
where it counted. Yeah. This
It had
bag
heart.
laughs.
This bag laughs.
when you open it. Yeah.
Yeah, what was that? It was a Riddler thing, right? But it's
No,
No,
it's
it's
from
a
the
Joker
It's
thing.
from the Joker from the first Batman movie. The very first
what's
Batman
the
movie,
difference
man.
between the Joker and the Riddler?
I'm gonna throw something through the screen.
Jim Carrey.
Bag laughing. No, in the
Yeah.
first Batman
Keith,
movie, the 89 Batman movie, the Joker falls from the cathedral and then he lands, and then the Commissioner Gordon hears like this laughing, and he's like, "What the hell is this?" And it's just going, ha, 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 ha. And he finds out there's this bag that the Joker had, and it leaves you with the question of, did Jack Nicholson ever laugh, or did he use this like laughing bag to make all of his laughs? Like, was he genuinely laughing?
My
Or was
question
he
is,
really
who
a-
cares?
The
Yeah,
stupidest
wait.
question to ask at the end of a movie. Like, what?
That's because you guys don't watch good movies. You know, it's fine. It's fine.
Anyway.
Yeah, they're stupid. Wait.
So,
which one? Wait,
McCurdy, good luck with your shooting tomorrow.
not that one.
Thank you.
This one.
It's
Do you guys have like a Patreon or anything? Do people have Patreons nowadays?
yeah. I didn't raise any money for this movie. I'm just.
Did you try?
No, I didn't.
We talked about it.
We talked about it,
You did,
yeah.
and then you did.
I got to the. Here's the thing. I got to the point where we were like, I'm already bought money. I've already like paid for equipment. I have a ton of equipment to shoot all this movie stuff with. So I was like, I'm just gonna make the movie, and then we're gonna make sure we feed everybody, and like, it's gonna be great.
You're gonna make
It's a
some
no-
PB&Js and bananas.
It's a no budget indie film.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great. We're gonna make a movie, and we start tomorrow.
It'll be a great
and-
experience.
It's gonna be a great experience, like this podcast has been. So
Is this your first?
it's first feature film, not my first film.
Is it? It's not. This isn't full feature length, is it?
It'll
Yeah.
be
90?
close. It will be closer to 90. It's not gonna. It might not
70?
land at 90, but it's gonna be close to 90.
Okay.
So it'll be like a medium, like a small, but it'll be considered a feature film. So yeah, that's the hope. So we're
And
gonna
you're doing like a 2-week filming.
2-week shoot. Yeah, 2-week
Bonanza.
shoot. But it is a bonanza because Kevin and I went and we scouted all of our we'd already picked all the locations and talked to all the people we needed to talk to. It's just I wanted to scout, get feet on the ground, look at the place, like actually be there, and we did all that today. So we went to all the locations and kind of laid out like, okay, this is how I'm thinking in my head as I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, I'll probably put the camera here. We'll block this.
Oh,
in like
cool.
This is where all this is going to go. So there was a lot of that. So, so we start shooting tomorrow. And basically I'm going to be, shooting for 2 weeks straight.
Damn.
So
Are you
we're
gonna?
supposed
Is your wife, your family gonna
He's
visit?
here. Yeah, family's here. Yeah, no, Lily and the kids are here.
Okay.
Lily's helping. Lily's one of the producers on the movie. She's helping with the catering and helping with the food and making sure things get fed.
Nice.
she's doing a lot of stuff too. So there's a lot like it's a whole family
Logistics.
affair.
The
It's
whole family's gonna be in it too.
yeah, everybody in the family is going to be in the movie.
And you know, the whole movie is really about family.
Is it?
Because I gotta my brother-in-law.
I guess it is about family.
My
Charlie's
sister's
read
really
this.
worried about
Charlie's read,
there might be a little ranked cameo in there.
there might be. Charlie has read the script, so he can attest and say, is it about Charlie? Is this movie about family? You tell me.
Yeah,
Giggles in the corner.
it's
Just
totally
sit
about
there.
family.
Dark. It is about family.
For
Yeah.
my
Yeah, just like Star Wars, it's all about family.
It's family. It's about a family.
Yeah.
It is
Just
about
like
it is a story about
prequels.
it is the if I want to get on my high horse and be that guy, it's the story about what one man would do for his family.
to save his mom.
Actually, it's
Yeah.
not as bad as mine.
It's like Fast X.
Jen-
Speaking of Fast
really-
X, we have Michael Keaton, who's all about family.
I like Michael Keaton. He's I'll be honest. I don't think this is his best performance. Like it doesn't outshine it doesn't even outshine his Spider-Man performance. But just to have him back as Bruce Wayne Batman is just the coolest thing in the world. I'm just
His
like,
intro was
It was
kind
pretty
of
cool.
dumb. Like his intro was like,
It's a very Yoda
I'm an old
intro.
guy. Yeah, it was
It's a
yes,
Yoda
yes,
intro. It was
I
a
wish
Yoda.
we would have seen the car
That's
driving
true.
around. Is
It's
was that airplane thing in like
The
old
version of-
ones?
so basically what I've read and
'Cause
seen
that-
is that they weren't sure how
Batmobile's iconic.
far they weren't sure how far they wanted to go with the Tim Burton stuff. Like essentially Anton First was the art designer who designed the Batmobile and all that stuff for that movie that gave it that specific look. And they weren't sure how far they wanted to go with it with this movie because they didn't want to like do that, but then it like changes all the Flash stuff, so they had to kind of be careful how far they went with it. But they're like, well, we wanted to make a version where like you took those versions of the car and all the tech and the Bat computer and the Batwing and all that stuff and make a version that had been like he had been doing this a while, and then he just eventually just made it the latest version. Charlie's really bored, let me tell you.
I think he's
that's
drunk.
That's Nans. That's
Yeah,
Nans. That's Nans. But I like this. I like this.
Yeah, then we're tiny.
Yeah, no, I like
We're
it. I like it.
slightly bigger.
Well,
here.
yeah.
like it. I like it.
This now we
I
see
don't mind
everything.
my face being covered.
No, I like it.
I feel sick.
I like it.
Get me out of here.
Do any of you fuckers have anything left to say? Kevra, you hate this movie. Do you have anything else you
Okay,
like?
I don't
Get your
hate
angst out.
movie, but,
Get
like,
your
man,
angst out.
you guys
Above
are-
or below Super Mario?
It'd be a toss-up between those two, honestly, because like I still enjoyed aspects of this film, just like I enjoyed aspects of Shazam 2, but like it was also kind of a mess. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, again, like I was telling Ryan, and I was trying to tell you guys earlier, I feel like the first movie should have been more about him and his family. Maybe he was trying to get his dad out of jail, blah, blah, blah. He either succeeds or, his dad dies. And then the
There you
second
go.
movie, then you go back to him, like the mom, like it's all about the mom. And you kind of earned it from the first movie from setting that up with the more of the relationship with his parents and all that kind of stuff. But you got what you got. And for what they did, I think it wasn't the worst that they could have done. Like they could have made this movie a lot worse than what it was. So I give it absolute credit.
This movie
Honest-
could have been worse.
Yeah.
It really could
Which
have
is
because
true. Which is very true.
yeah, I mean, I think this movie was an easy way to like the story that they chose to tell for being the first Flash movie. 100% could have been a disaster, but I think they did good with their approach. It's just there's a lot of stuff I didn't like. Yes, one of the big things is Ezra Miller, but there's also little things here and there that really bugged me. So CGI was one of the things, but not as much, I think, as much as you guys. Like, it really bothered me in the opening scene.
It's
The
noticeable.
Yeah, it's probably like
but after that, it was fine.
I am someone who like I remember seeing Avengers Endgame and being like, why does this movie have some of the worst CGI I've ever? And this is before all that news came out about like,
Endgame?
Marvel, not Endgame,
Infinity
Infinity
War,
War, yeah. And like when all this news came out where people were saying like, oh, the reason why like CGI has been bad in recent stuff is because Marvel's been basically taking over every single CGI effects house, and like they're basically just running them dry of just trying to get things completed. And so that was before that. And I remember seeing Infinity War and just being like, this is like there's some shots in this movie that I was like, this looks like
Hulk at the end.
awful. Like specifically Hulk in the Iron Hulk suit thing. That looks really bad. There's a lot of
That's
sequences
the only
like
thing
that.
I can think of.
But that's in that movie. And then when I finally saw this one, I was like, "Oh, this is bad."
It's like
really
Agent
bad.
Smith in the Matrix.
It's really, but yeah,
Yes.
it's just like Charlie put it. It's just like it's the Harry Potter.
It's
CGI.
Harry Potter and the
Harry
Matrix
Potter
circa
1.
2002, 2000.
2001.
2, and 3.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
It's
Like it just looks
embarrassing.
like that.
It's
It looks like a very much older, and it doesn't seem like it was done in a meta fashion. It really just looks like they either.
Like, how hard is it to have
Right.
2 berries on screen? Like what? Like we got
don't
like a
think it-
billion Paul Rudds
that
in Ant-Man.
my God, that was it was like,
Why can't there be 2 Ezras on screen?
yeah, they couldn't.
I never noticed it as
Oh my
much as
God.
you guys did.
Oh,
There were
Dude,
you
no.
liar.
Next time, yeah, you fucking
I
liar. Next time you watch the
I
movie,
really saw it. No,
shut
no,
the
there were
fuck
moments
up.
where I saw it.
Next you watch this
shut the
movie,
fuck up.
when
Meet
you're
me outside.
watching it, there's always
me
one of the
outside.
Ezras looks like shit. One Ezra
you
looks
look like
like total ass. The other one is
Really
clearly
bad.
there in person. The other one's face has been fucking replaced.
Yeah, I get it.
It's really bad,
It's
but
not that,
but I'm watching it being
Wait,
like, I
those
don't care. The whole time I
McCurdy
was
is
watching it,
normal
I did
50.
not care because the story was on point. And
All right.
that I
Anyway,
I
how
submit
much
a
longer
million
can we
excuses.
delay McCurdy and Kevra going to sleep together?
I don't want to
We're
sleep
not
with
sleeping
Kevin.
together.
It's hot in
We're
here, and I want to go home.
Yeah.
You guys should sleep in the same. No. If you're gonna make a good
Go
movie,
home.
you should sleep in the same bed for the next 2 weeks.
That's a lie.
Nah,
That's
I
not a
don't
lie.
like
I'm
sleeping
pretty
in
sure
lie.
that's how good
That's
movies are made.
experience.
Make
As
it.
a
I don't
person
wanna
who's
be-
never
that's
made a
awesome.
movie, I'm pretty
You
sure
sleep
that's how
naked.
you make a
I
good
don't wanna
movie.
do that.
Every time Nance and
You
I make a
sleep-
movie,
The director
I
sleeps
butt
with
fuck him
their
every night.
actor, right?
Nance,
Huh?
how many times have you and I boofed because we've made a movie?
Because we made a movie or because we were roommates at one point?
Both.
It just happens.
Yeah.
Constantly. All the
Yeah.
time.
You gotta explain to me what boofing is.
Boofing is
pegging,
butt
But
fucking.
reverse.
Butt fucking.
That's butt fucking. Nance
with your
can't
butt?
get enough
No,
of it.
like no penis involved. Is it
Butt
just
to
the
butt.
Like,
Ass to ass.
Okay, we gotta get off this live stream. Like, we have to stop this. All right,
For Michael Keaton.
thank you for being a part of this movie and being the best part, because Ezra Miller is a weird sex pervert who nobody liked in the role in the first place. But even though he kind of like made this movie, he sold this movie to me personally and made it like emotional and all that. But Michael Keaton, you really drove it home. So let's give
He
praise to
didn't
Michael
drive.
Keaton and then get the
Let's
fuck
get
off this.
nuts.
Yeah, let's close out. Anybody have anything else to say about Mr. Michael Keaton?
Actually,
You guys
here at the
have a
end.
good night.
Michael Keaton?
Hey, you have a good night.
You gotta say bye. Okay, bye. Bye, Keaton. Good Batman.
Subscribe,
Bye,
like,
Batman.
join the Discord. McCurdy, do you want to put like behind the scenes in the Discord? That'd be cool.
Bye,
I can do
Keaton.
that.
Cause
I
bye,
might do that.
Keaton.
See?
Good, Mike Keaton.
Yeah.
Cause he good. Cause he might get an actor. Cause he Mike Keaton. Cause he did.
I got a piss.